The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves and starring Robert Pattinson, took the world by storm a few years ago and recently received a direct to streaming spin off series starring Colin Farrell as the Penguin. And it was watching this very spin off that got me thinking about The Batman again. I haven't been able to get it off my mind lately, and I couldn't figure out why because I enjoyed The Batman when it first came out, but recent rewatches left me feeling dissatisfied. Each time I've watched the film, I've found my opinion of it steering in a more negative direction, but I couldn't quite articulate what was bothering me about the movie. So recently, I decided to do a thorough watch through while taking notes to see if I could separate out my feelings and try to look at the objective issues in the film, and oh boy, was I surprised to find that this movie, while beautiful on the surface, was, in fact, rotten to the core. Now, before I lose you, I want to explain what I mean, and to do that, I need to give you a brief overview of how I watch films with a critical eye. This won't be the first time you've heard it, because the objective versus subjective art criticism conversation on YouTube has been raging on for some time, but I feel I should make my perspective clear so you know what you're getting from me before you dive into this video, because you may be here a while. There's two ways I think about movies: whether I like it, and whether it's good. Many people would be confused and say, but those are the same thing! I'm sorry, but no, they are not. A good movie is one that is of high quality in the execution of its storytelling goals, both from a technical perspective and from a scriptwriting perspective. A movie that I personally enjoy can be of any quality because my feelings on the film are entirely subjective to my personal tastes. For example, I love the Mortal Kombat movies from the 90s, even though I know they're hot garbage, but I have so much fun watching those terrible dumpster fires. And on the other hand, Titanic is one of the most successful and technically impressive films ever put to screen. And yet, it bores the hell out of me. So when I say that a film is bad, please know that I'm trying to be as objective as possible about the individual filmmaking aspects that go into the movie, completely separated from my personal feelings on the film. And The Batman is a perfect example of just such a film, and I will attempt to explain to you why by starting off with the positive aspects that I found enjoyable. Also, it's better to get the good stuff out of the way first because it won't take that long. The things that this film does well are down to the technical execution. Lighting, cinematography, music, set/production design, makeup and costumes, and while it isn't typically counted among the technical side, the acting performances. This film is beautiful to look at. It nails the tone and atmosphere of Gotham City. It feels dark and brooding and crime noir, and that is a perfect fit for a Batman film. The shots themselves are creative when and where possible, with some great close-ups, some POV shots, wide angles for the fight scenes to capture the fight choreography in all its glory. The music for this film is hands down my favorite thing about the movie, and for good reason. Michael Giacchino is one of my favorite composers, and he absolutely knocked it out of the park here. The main theme was a worm in my brain for months after I first watched the movie. I would hum it at work anytime I was walking somewhere or doing something incredibly mundane because it made everything feel more epic. The other pieces in the film are equally as captivating and unique. The tense violin music during the investigation scenes that add that creepy Mindhunter-like atmosphere. Catwoman and Riddler's themes are excellent, and they give you a good sense of the characters even before they speak a line of dialogue. The makeup is also on point here, for one character in particular, which leads us right into performances. This movie has an all-star cast, and while I would have made a few different casting choices, all the actors turn in excellent performances, with Colin Farrell's Penguin being the obvious standout, even under all that makeup. I include acting in this group because it is a major part of the physical execution of putting what's in the script on screen, and in that respect, this film executes the script beautifully. All the physical elements behind Matt Reeves' vision for Batman and Gotham are superbly realized. It's his vision for Batman and the script itself where all the problems lie. This script, and what it does to all these classic comic book characters, is a steaming pile of batshit. And it's only because of the surface level look and feel of the movie that nobody noticed. Like I said, the movie looks great, sounds great, and it feels like the live-action Batman detective story we Batman fans have been waiting for most of our lives. Sadly, this is all surface-level set dressing to disguise a nonsensical story full of plot holes and inconsistent characters who barely resemble their comic book counterparts and the source material they come from. Long story short, The Batman tricked you into thinking it was a good film. Don't feel too bad, it tricked me too, and for quite a long time. It was only just recently I gave it a more critical eye and I've found all the problems that it has. So, now that we've gotten what it does right out of the way, I'm going to break down for you all the things it does wrong, which entirely comes down to the writing. I don't want to discount all the positive aspects I just talked about, but we must measure the pros and cons for doing certain things well in a film and others poorly. Film is a visual and auditory medium. It requires good cinematography, sound design, etc., but it also requires a well-written script with well-written characters who behave consistently and do things that make some sort of sense that the audience can follow to tell a satisfying story. I don't think we can accurately divide it up into percentages, but if I had to ballpark it, I would call it 50% technical execution and 50% writing. So, if it looks and sounds great, but the story and characters are retarded, we're looking at a 5 out of 10 at best, and that's being generous. Most audiences are not critics and won't look past what's right in front of them, but many people who reviewed this film at least agreed that the third act felt silly and tacked on and made the film way longer than it needed to be. That shows potential for others to be able to catch on to mistakes or gaps in logic in the script, which means that the problems in the writing could easily lower their enjoyment. Personally, I find it hard to just enjoy the pretty colors and ignore what I'm hearing and seeing, plot and character-wise, but maybe that's just me. So, from here on out, I will be addressing the 3 major categories of writing issues I found with this movie: the plot, the characters, and the themes. One last thing I wanted to talk about before I get started breaking down the plot is adaptation. A lot of my favorite YouTube critics and commentators have different opinions on how important it is to consider the accuracy of a film or TV adaptation of previous source material. Some say that you should judge a work first on its own merits and only use comparison to the source material as sort of a recreational point of conversation. Others believe accuracy to the source, or at least to the themes and messages of the source, are critical to the overall quality of the film because it is an adaptation of someone else's work. I'm somewhat torn on where I fall because I do believe it is possible to make a good film and for it to still be a poor adaptation of the source material. Joker is an excellent example of a film that deviates heavily from the source but still tells a great story in its own right. This is somewhat subjective, but my gut opinion is that if you make changes from the source and it doesn't result in a higher quality product, then you made a poor choice, since you could have just stuck with the original. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Unforgivable changes are ones that betray the characters from their source and the spirit of the ideals they stand for. Joker 2, funnily enough, is an excellent example of this because it betrays the character and the film that directly preceded it. Unfortunately, the Batman commits this cardinal sin against Batman, so adaptation arguments will be on the table for this video. Okay, all the preamble is out of the way, so now we can start. I'm going to go through the film scene by scene and see how far we can get before we run into any major issues. I'll do my best to sort out nitpicks, meaning small issues that, while being accurate criticisms, don't affect the story, from film-breaking plot holes and character inconsistencies and contradictions. Without further ado, let's get into the plot of The Batman. The film opens with us looking through the eyes of an unknown person looking through a pair of binoculars at a very fancy-looking house with a very fancy-looking family inside. We learn in a moment that this house belongs to the mayor of Gotham, Don Mitchell Jr. We also hear some heavy breathing from our unknown voyeur. Either he has some sort of condition, or maybe he's just nervous. We pan up to see an open skylight, and then we cut to later in the evening when Mayor Mitchell is reviewing his performance in a televised debate against up-and-coming mayoral candidate Bella Real. We get some mention of the Gotham Renewal Fund, Maroni drug bust, and the fact that crime is at an all-time high despite the mayor's efforts to clean up the city, all of which will be important later. He then goes to answer a phone call and moves to reveal a masked figure who has been standing behind him this entire time! Wow. Spooky. Presumably, this is our voyeur from before who has made his way into the mayor's mansion while he was out with his family via the open skylight we saw earlier. So, right off the bat, this guy seems pretty impressive. He staked out the mayor's house undetected, scaled the building, rappelled down through the skylight, and is continuing to surveil the mayor while standing right behind him without being noticed. He must have some sort of special training to allow him to be so effective at stealth. Oh, maybe not. Our assailant flails at the mayor from the shadows like a noodle with cerebral palsy and screaming in anger, falling over after the first hit, and then very unskillfully and full of rage beats the mayor to death with an unknown tool. He then goes to work wrapping the mayor with duct tape, taking in heavy strained breaths from the exertion while he does it, and we cut to black. So from our opening scene, I already have some questions. The Riddler, our main villain of the piece. At this point, very little is known about him, but we can make some inferences. He's smart enough to use stealth to his advantage, and he wants the mayor dead. He's also physically fit enough to climb up a building and then down a rope into a room with a very high ceiling, but seems to have no finesse or cool headedness when it comes to physical violence. This seems a little contradictory since scaling a building takes some muscle and stamina, as does beating someone to death. We can better assume he's no athlete, despite the climb, due to his troubled breathing. These aren't a problem yet, as we're likely to learn more about him as the film goes on, but there is one thing that probably wouldn't notice for most people as it did to me on my first watch. How was Riddler so easily able to break into the home of arguably the most important man in the city? It immediately struck me that the mayor, the chief political officer of Gotham, a major metropolitan area known for its high crime rate, has zero security in place in his mansion located in the middle of the city. So I searched online whether mayors in real cities, often compared to Gotham, like New York, Chicago, and Detroit, have bodyguards, and it turns out that yes, most mayors in major municipalities like this have protective details on them and their home 24/7, like their own secret service. There are no guards shown in this scene, and other than an iron fence surrounding the property, no security or alarm systems of any kind. He even has his skylight wide open. Not to mention floor to ceiling windows on every floor that may be bulletproof, but based on the complete lack of precautions taken everywhere else, I doubt it. Riddler might have been able to just shoot him through the window, but then his family would be right there to witness it, and he wouldn't be able to do the rest of what he has planned. So is this a plot hole? I'm willing to say no for now, but it is incredibly stupid that the guy responsible for the whole of the city is so easy to kill that an asthmatic lunatic in a mask could do it unimpeded on what looks like probably his first attempt at murder ever. A contrivance at best, but still possible. Next, we open with narration from our protagonist, the Batman, aka Bruce Wayne, reading from his personal journal detailing his activities and experiences as a nocturnal vigilante. He says it's been 2 years since he donned the cape and cowl as we see him move through a crowd in the pouring rain in Gotham Square, disguised as a civilian. We then see a series of crimes in progress: a convenience store robbery, some people spray painting City Hall, and a gang all wearing the same makeup on a train preparing to assault a passenger. We then see Bruce gearing up as Batman as he explains that he can't be everywhere at once, but that between the reputation he's cultivated for himself as a predator stalking criminals in the night, and the bat signal shining in the sky, Gotham's criminals have learned to fear the signal and avoid the shadows, as he could be hiding in any dark alley waiting to strike. 2 of the 3 groups of criminals run in terror, leaving us to focus on the thugs on the train. They chase down an unassuming passenger so that their young initiate to the gang can earn his place by knocking an innocent bystander out cold. We then hear heavy footsteps echoing out of a dark passage in the train station that get louder and louder until the owner is revealed, the Batman. It's here that we get our first proper look at our titular hero, and it is immediately apparent that this is a much more grounded and realistic looking Batman. The suit looks slapped together from some standard police tactical gear, as well as some custom looking body armor plates, cowl, and cape. Overall, it looks practical and intimidating, but definitely homemade, which might indicate we're going to be getting some pretty down-to-earth action and low-tech gadgets. The lead thug asks, "Who the hell are you supposed to be?" before attacking Batman with a machete and getting his ass summarily torn to pieces with a series of blocks and hard-hitting quick strikes as he falls to the ground. Batman continues to pound his face with his fists. Batman then slowly looks up at the others and answers, "I'm vengeance." Strong opening words for our hero that will be important later on. The rest of the gang then attempts to subdue Batman, getting in 1 or 2 hits here and there, but largely getting swiped aside by a much better trained opponent, as you might expect. We then see one thug recovering from his beating and pulling a revolver on Batman as the initiate, unsure of whether this is a good idea, warns Batman of the gun, but only too late as the thug fires at him. One round hits Batman in the chest and deflects off the metal-looking plate over his pecs, and another glances off the plastic-looking plates on his shoulder? Maybe that's just an editing mistake. Batman rounds on the thug and jams his fist into his neck, activating his taser gloves! Holy crap! That's some high-end custom shit right there! Not impossible, but not what I expected from such a humble-looking batsuit. Still, pretty cool though. Looks like this Batman has some tricks up his sleeve after all. Literally. After that, the remaining thugs leave, and the man Batman just saved looks up at him in terror and says, "Please don't hurt me." Interesting. It seems civilians and criminals alike are afraid of the vigilante. Batman then sees the bat signal in the sky and leaves to investigate. Overall, I love this scene. It may be one of the best introductory scenes for Batman ever made. It sets the tone perfectly for a Batman who has established himself as a force of nature and fear in Gotham, gives a quick but well-shot little fight scene, and lays some seeds for the themes the film will be exploring throughout. The Batsuit raises some questions in my mind, but overall, no major complaints. Next scene, we get a first-person view walking down a hallway filled with cops and FBI agents. The camera flips to show Batman walking past all these law officers who are staring at him, only for him to be stopped by a beat cop at the door to the study where Mayor Mitchell was murdered. The cop refuses to let him in as he is not a cop himself, but Lieutenant Gordon instructs the officer to let him through. So, this is Jim Gordon, huh? He's looking tan. Anyway, we get the implication here that while Gordon is on good terms with Batman, the rest of the police and the city as a whole are still a bit weary of trusting a masked vigilante, creating a sense of tension anytime he's in the room with authority figures. Okay, that's an interesting dynamic. Let's see where it goes. Gordon asks the detective on scene for the details of the murder so far, while Batman methodically scans the room, reviewing the other pieces of evidence. The mayor's face has been taped over with the phrase "No More Lies" written in blood on it. His thumb has been severed, and a letter addressed to the Batman has been left behind. The detective tells them the security detail downstairs said the mom and son were at trick-or-treating and left Don behind. Wait, so there was a security detail? They didn't hear the guy they're supposed to be protecting get beaten to death? Jesus Christ, what does the city pay them for? Anyway, they read the Riddler's riddle, which doesn't really tell them much, it's just more of a calling card, but he leaves behind a cipher and a code that will presumably give them a lead to follow. At that moment, Police Commissioner Pete Savage enters the room and immediately gets angry at the sight of Batman and asks Gordon what he was thinking allowing a vigilante onto an active crime scene, especially the scene of the mayor's murder. Good point, Pete. When Gordon shows Savage the letter addressed to Batman, he gets even angrier and points out that Batman must obviously be involved in this, and he could even be a suspect. Wow! So, not only are the police not cool with Batman, but the Commissioner himself is very suspicious of him. Seems like any decent cop who was confronted with a law-breaking vigilante and a room full of armed officers to back him up would want to immediately arrest and unmask him. But no, he just tells Gordon to get him out of here and leaves it at that. If upholding the law is the only motivation we have for Savage at this point, there's no reason Batman shouldn't be in cuffs right now, and the film would end right here. But, as we'll learn later, he has even more reason not to want a man who plays by his own rules and is dedicated to punishing criminals snooping around the murder of a man with similar motivations to his own. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is, we have hit our first major plot hole. Gordon is Batman's only ally in the police department, and he's only a lieutenant. He does not have the authority to authorize cooperation with a vigilante. On top of that, the bat signal is entirely his invention. If Commissioner Savage doesn't want Batman out on the streets and knows one of his own detectives are working with and protecting him, Gordon should be brought up on charges as well for conspiring with a criminal. In the comics, Gordon is typically Gotham's police commissioner and has a working relationship with Batman by the time he's in charge. As he's the top cop in the city and the mayor doesn't typically have the authority to dictate how a police chief does his job, Gordon can get away with working with a vigilante. In the scenario set up in this film, this straight up shouldn't be happening. And I stress again, this is assuming that the cops are all on the up and up. Because if they're corrupt criminals who don't care about right and wrong, they have twice the motivation to arrest Batman right here and now. I almost don't need to go any further than this to say that the film has backed itself into a corner, but we're only 20 minutes in, and believe me, the leaps in logic or downright absence of it only gets worse from here. Batman leaves the crime scene, and we get more narration from him about his time as a vigilante as he rides his motorcycle through the city. He tells us that after being active for 2 years, violent crime has only gone up, and he's not sure if he's making any difference at all. Okay, that seems weird. You'd think someone as smart and efficient as Batman would have made some kind of a dent in his first year of crime fighting, let alone 2. But maybe we'll get a good explanation later as to why that's not the case. We then see Bruce riding towards Wayne Tower as he goes down an abandoned subway tunnel that says Wayne Terminus, with a gate that automatically opens for him. Past this gate, we see the Batcave, which is in an abandoned subway station, directly below Wayne Tower, where he lives, which he owns, which has his name on it, just like the tunnel, which is completely open to the public except for one thin aluminum shutter gate. What the fuck?! I'm starting to understand why Batman hasn't been very effective in 2 whole years worth of crime fighting. It's because Batman's a fucking moron. The one saving grace to keeping his identity and his hidden lair a secret is that when he's riding around on his motorcycle, he wears normal clothing and a helmet. But if ever, anyone, say maybe the chief of police who wants him arrested, was able to connect that motorcyclist to the Batman, he could have him follow down a Wayne tunnel into Wayne Terminus connected to Wayne Tower where Bruce fucking Wayne has a secret base full of Batman shit in the middle of the goddamn city! Why? Why would anyone write this way? In the comics, the Batcave is a literal cave, undetectable from the outside. Yes, it's under Wayne Manor, but it's a private estate many miles outside the city and gated off from the public with a multitude of different security measures to keep anyone from snooping around. In this film, there's literally only one gate made of weak metal that separates the Batcave from the easily accessible public streets in the middle of Gotham City. In fact, even though this seems to be a shut-down Wayne-owned train station, they must have gotten approval from the city to build all this, which means there are probably blueprints for these tunnels at the city planner's office, accessible to the public at any time. This is a terrible place for Bruce to live and operate, and is yet another major contrivance that borders on plot hole because, as we'll find out later, he takes this exact level of care and attention in all his efforts to keep the police or any random stranger from tracking him down and finding out who he is. Anyway, inside the Batcave, Bruce removes some sort of contact lens from his eye and places it on a terminal on his computer. This lens is some sort of super advanced camera slash radio transmitter that records over 12 hours of footage at least with full visual audio playback. This is why he was walking around the crime scene methodically staring at every piece of evidence. Not because he was trying to get a firm memory of everything in sight, but because he was recording it all. Holy shit, okay, I guess we're going pretty sci-fi with the bat gadgets. I thought we were going for grounded and gritty. My mistake, I guess. Wonder what other amazingly impossible shit he's got. The news report playing in the background remarks on the eerie coincidence that 20 years ago, to the day, Bruce's parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne, were murdered the same night Thomas announced he was running for mayor. The film does this to convince you that this has any significance at all. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. As Bruce continues reviewing the crime scene footage, Alfred enters the Batcave. Aw, yay, Alfred! I can't wait to see what kind of fun dynamic the two of them have. I always love seeing these two characters interact in all forms of Batman media.
Our accounting friends at Wayne Enterprises are coming for breakfast.
Here. Why?
Because I couldn't get you to go there.
I haven't got time for this.
It's getting serious, Bruce. If this continues, it won't be long before you've nothing left.
I don't care about that. Any of that.
You don't care about your family's legacy?
I don't care what happens to me.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Alfred, stop. You're not my father.
I'm well aware.
Oh, fuck me. They immediately have a fight because apparently Bruce is so inactive as his civilian alter ego that the company is failing, and he doesn't give a shit about whether he has the money to fund his vigilante operations. When Alfred tries to convince him that it's a bad idea to be so single-minded about the mission, he tells Alfred, "You're not my real dad!" while his mascara runs and Nirvana blares in the background. You know, when it was announced that the Twilight guy was going to play Batman and lots of fans freaked out and said he would be a lame, emo, vegan pussy, I defended him because I know Pattinson is a great actor when given good material. But I guess all the naysayers were right because this is probably exactly what they pictured when they heard Sparkles, the vampire pedophile, was going to play their favorite hero. I'm sorry I doubted you, Snyder fans. Batman prints off the cipher left by Riddler and fucks off. Later that morning, Bruce comes downstairs to the dining room to find Alfred solving the cipher for him. At the same time, the maid tells Alfred the accountants are here to discuss what's going on at Wayne Enterprises. Damn, seems like Alfred solves the riddles, manages the house, manages the finances, and pretty much every aspect of Bruce's life. What the fuck is Bruce's reason for being alive? Oh, never mind, he takes a wild fucking guess that the key to the cipher is bullshit and he ends up being right. Uncompleted, it spells drive, and naturally he thinks car. So he and Gordon go to Mayor Mitchell's private garage to investigate. Okay, his brain functions at least room temperature and he gets lucky sometimes. My fucking hero. Could you tell I'm starting to get annoyed? Good. At the garage, they find a pair of pruning shears covered in blood sticking out of the tire of one car, clearly to get them to check that one because Riddler knows how fucking dumb they are, so he wants to make sure they find the clue he left them. They check the car, and Batman finds Riddler's clue, a USB with the mayor's severed thumb hanging off of it, and Batman says, "Thumb drive." Okay, that one got a little bit of a chuckle out of me. Except Batman says they're looking for a USB port before he even finds the drive, like he already knows what he's about to find in the car. How did he know that's what they were looking for? The clue was drive, which led them to the car. Why would he assume that they're also looking for a data drive? Did he read the fucking script? Ugh. Even when I try to enjoy the film, it shits down my throat. They take the drive and immediately plug it into Gordon's laptop without thinking, hey, maybe this has a virus or some incriminating evidence on it. Might want to take it to the lab before I plug it into my personal laptop since I'm a professional criminal investigator and I know procedures so damn well. Nope, he just plugs it in. Fuck. Gordon's as dumb as Batman. It's encrypted, so Batman hands Gordon the thumb and they find a thumbprint reader on the drive. It works and immediately opens a file full of photos of the mayor with some girl who is not his wife. Wait, Is this Mitchell's thumb drive? Because if it is, why would he have photos somebody else took of him cheating on his wife? And if it's not, why would his thumb open the drive that somebody else put the photos on? Did Riddler program in Mitchell's thumbprint just for the thumb drive gag? That's not a riddle, that's just a stupid ass joke. Why not just leave the drive for them? The fact that he cut the thumb off indicates that he needed it to open the drive, which means the photos were already on there. So, was somebody blackmailing Mitchell before the Riddler killed him, or did Riddler take the photos? If he took them, he could have just left the drive for Batman with a letter on Mitchell's body. Is this just an extra step to make us feel like Batman is solving clues? Because he didn't. Alfred solved it, and Riddler led him right to it. He just made it take longer than it needed to. Almost like Riddler knew he was in a murder mystery and wanted to pad out the runtime, which would make sense if he was trying to distract and delay the cops and Batman from figuring out his plan. But we find out later that that's not the case. He wants Batman to figure this stuff out on purpose and in a timely manner. But why waste his time and make it harder for him? Fucking hell, the bullshit is piling up faster than I can shovel it, and we're only 30 minutes in! From the photos, they are unable to identify Mitchell's girlfriend, but they do immediately recognize the Penguin, Carmine Falcone's right-hand man and manager of the Iceberg Lounge, the club they're all leaving in the photo. The drive then automatically hacks Gordon's email and sends out the photos to every major news outlet in Gotham, which for some fucking reason Gordon had all the addresses to in his email. Whatever. He's retarded and he deserves worse. Batman goes to the Iceberg Lounge and knocks on the front fucking door. Jesus Christ. The thug immediately shuts it in his face when Batman asks about the Penguin. Smart guy. But then he immediately opens it again to show his twin brother, who also works there, that Batman, the guy known for beating up criminals, is here looking for their boss. A criminal. Which they also are. Why not just lock the door? It's a heavy steel factory door. He probably can't get through and then he'd be fucked. But you know who probably could get into this club? No problem. Bruce fucking Wayne, famous billionaire bachelor about town. But no, Batman goes straight into the front entrance and only succeeds at this because the twins are total morons. He punches them out and walks right in. Batman gets into a little tussle with Penguin's goons, holds his own pretty well, till they start pulling guns on him in a crowded nightclub, an actual legitimate business that Penguin runs and uses as a revenue stream. He shouldn't even give his men guns here, but regardless, they do zero damage to him, because Batman's incredibly gritty-looking homemade armor is apparently made of fucking mithril. Nothing, and I mean nothing, gets through that suit, and you'll see what I mean as the film goes on. It is literally fucking plot armor. It also has little grapple guns on each wrist. So what is this? The big thigh holster on his leg that, if you look it up, seems to be a realistic-looking grappling hook launcher. Fucking nothing, he never uses it as far as we see. I found other sources saying it's a sticky bomb launcher, but we never see that in the film either. I'm starting to get the feeling that the original design of this batsuit was more realistic, but as the film started hitting plot points where Batman should definitely be screwed, they decided to fix it with CGI and give him a bunch of insane James Bond gadgets that ruin the realistic aesthetic they were planning initially. I can't prove it, but that's how it feels. Penguin finally shows up, calms everyone down, and introduces himself to Batman before inviting him up to his office to talk. Wow, that was easier than Batman made it. It's almost like Penguin has a vested interest in keeping his business going and is willing to humor someone who might be a threat to him because he's on his home turf and knows there's not a lot Batman can do to him right now. Well, I'll be damned! Do we have an intelligent and rational character on our hands? He'd be the first one so far. Immediately, Colin Farrell's Penguin is the most interesting and engrossing character in the film, and he will remain that way till the credits roll. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but as you'll see, Penguin is the most consistent and logically written character in the movie. And by that, I don't mean Penguin is the smartest or most logical person, but that everything he does makes sense for him to do based on the character traits they establish for him. And not to mention, Farrell crushes the role. He's completely unrecognizable in that makeup, and the film is all the better for it. No wonder he got his own show. Batman asks Penguin about the girl in the photo, and Penguin plays coy, pretending he's never met the mayor or her. At that exact time, a waitress in high-heeled boots brings Penguin a drink and exchanges money for drugs. She seems very surprised to see Batman, which is fair, as he's still a very mysterious figure in Gotham at this point. Batman notices her staring at the photo before she leaves. Batman asks again what the girl has to do with the mayor's murder, and Penguin continues to play dumb, angering Batman to the point of slamming him up against a window. Penguin remains adamant that he knows nothing. Batman looks more closely at the photo and notices that one of the girls coming out of the club is wearing the exact same boots as the waitress who was just in Penguin's office and is still peeking in on Batman. Wow, that's some fucking luck. What are the odds? Batman decides to tail the girl back to her apartment. While she's in the cab, she calls her roommate/girlfriend, who sounds like she's in a panic, on the other line. Batman watches the waitress enter her apartment and discovers that her roommate is Mitchell's girlfriend from the photograph, who is also on the news at the same time as a person of interest in Mitchell's murder. Well, all right. Batman has found an honest-to-goodness lead. It is once again down to complete dumb luck, because if the girl in the photo wasn't wearing those particular boots when the photo was taken and wasn't wearing the exact same boots on the exact same night Batman decided to question Penguin and didn't come into the office at the exact same time he was in there, he never would have found her. But hey, might as well take the advantage of the opportunity and question the girl while he knows where she is, because it seems like a lot of people, including the news channels and the police, want to speak with her as well. Batman continues to watch the girls talk, and Mitchell's girlfriend is clearly upset, so her roommate goes to her room and reveals a closet full of suspicious-looking equipment while she changes into an even more suspicious cat suit and parkours her way out of the window and down a fire escape. Catwoman, I presume. Anyway, she leaves and... Wait, Batman. Batman, what are you doing? Batman, go talk to the girlfriend. She's your only lead. Batman, what are you doing? Why are you following some random bitch who has nothing to do with the mayor when the person the Riddler specifically guided you to is sitting right there alone in her apartment? She's your only lead. Go talk to her. Oh my fuck. Batman fucking leaves to follow Catwoman, and he doesn't even know who she is or if she has any connection to the mayor's murder besides being roommates with his girlfriend. Son of a fucking bitch. Batman is literally chasing pussy instead of doing his job. God damn it. Catwoman rides her motorcycle to the mayor's house, and Batman follows closely behind her on his own motorcycle. Batman is shit at tailing a suspect from a reasonable distance, and Selina is too damn dumb to notice there's another motorcycle right behind her. She gets to Mitchell's house, and... what? She rappels down to the same open skylight that Riddler used to get in and murder the mayor, and they still haven't closed and locked the damn thing. Fuck me, man. What even is security? Catwoman pulls her rope down even though she needs to climb back up it to get out again. She finds a secret safe behind a painting, almost like she already knew where it was, and she breaks in to steal her girlfriend's passport, only to be snuck up on and confronted by Batman. She tries to attack him, but Batman quickly shows us that he is bigger, stronger, and clearly the better fighter. That's good, because despite being 5'0", I half expected her to wipe the floor with him, because these days, girls get it done, even when the laws of physics and biology say it shouldn't be physically possible. Good for you, movie. You get 1 point for that. Batman takes the passport and learns that the mayor's girlfriend is named Annika Kozlov. He accuses Catwoman of killing the mayor when Martinez, the cop who stopped Batman earlier, comes in to investigate all the noise while Batman and Catwoman hide. He then decides not to search the entire room and leaves again. Good police work, Martinez. No wonder they have you on door duty, you fucking potato. Catwoman explains that she didn't kill the mayor and that she was just here for Annika's passport because Mitchell took it to control her movements after she panicked over something he told her. Sounds like a pretty important something, reinforcing the fact that Batman should be back at the apartment talking to her right now instead of here talking to Selina. Batman agrees with me, so they go back to the apartment to talk to Annika, and when they get there, she's fucking gone. The door is kicked open, the apartment is ransacked, Selina's phone is missing because she fucking left it here for some reason, and so is Annika. God fucking damn it, Batman! Your one solid lead is gone, probably dead, and you don't seem to give a shit. Instead, he's inspecting their unpaid bills like fucking Rain Man counting toothpicks. Also, quick note, why show us that their electric bill is overdue? To hammer home that they were desperate, I guess? But 2 waitresses/thieves working at a high-end mob hangout probably getting crazy tips because they're both super hot and they can't afford an apartment together? I don't know. Seems weird. But I guess it doesn't matter as much as letting your only lead get murdered while you're trying to bang her roommate. The TV in the apartment is switched onto the news channel, and they have a video from social media posted by the Riddler. This video is of Riddler taking credit for the mayor's murder and announcing his next victim, Police Commissioner Pete Savage, whom he has tied up naked to a chair with some sort of rat maze trap around his head. Holy shit, man, is Riddler competent or not? We saw how much he struggled with the mayor's murder, but he somehow managed to kidnap the police commissioner all by himself with nobody around to stop him? And Pete is a big guy, too. Must be super heavy to knock out and carry off with no help. Also, it's kind of weird that the news would play such a disturbing video, which not only could be useful to the police, but that Riddler obviously wants people to see live on air. It's not impossible, it's just sort of crude and reckless. Riddler declares that there is a dark secret involving these city officials that he plans to reveal once his work is done. A secret that Annika may have had information on, and if Batman had questioned her when he had the chance, she may have revealed the connection between the mayor and the commissioner, and he might have been able to save hers and Pete's lives. Instead, 2 more people are dead, and he's no closer to figuring out Riddler's plan. Selina recognizes the commissioner from Penguin's club inside the club, 44 Below, which she says she doesn't work in, but she's seen him come in and out, along with a lot of other city officials who probably shouldn't be in a mob hangout. Batman and Gordon go to the city morgue to inspect the commissioner's body. Gordon says Riddler waited for the commissioner at the gym, and that Pete liked to work out late at night when no one else was around. He doesn't specify which gym, so once again I took to the internet to confirm a suspicion I had, and once again I was right. Most well-funded police departments like the ones in large cities like Gotham have their own gym facilities. Pete must not have been using that one, though, because police stations also have security doors that only authorized personnel can get into, and sometimes include private parking garages that only cops can access and park in. I can guarantee that the police commissioner would have his own parking space so that he could go from the gym to his car in the safe confines of police headquarters without being worried about potential attackers in the most crime-ridden city in America. So, naturally, Savage must have decided to use some random public gym with no security in a public parking lot where he could easily be abducted instead of the highly secure, private gym and private parking lot that only he and other highly trained police officers have access to. For some fucking reason. Batman and Gordon then inspect the maze trap that was on Savage's head, which is just sitting in the morgue and not in an evidence room, for some fucking reason. Just kidding, we know. It's to make the scene go by more quickly, which is hilarious because this movie is 3 fucking hours long and we're not even through the first hour yet. Gordon shows Batman photos that the Riddler sent out online of Savage doing a deal with a known drug dealer. He shows these to Batman, and then is surprised when Batman tells him that it's a drug dealer clearly having no idea that his friend was corrupt despite having the evidence in hand and having known him for years. Batman finds another riddle in the rat cage that tells him to find the rat and bring him into the light. They are completely stumped by this. Great detectives. Martinez warns them that somebody is coming to see the body because he is now helping Gordon facilitate Batman despite not trusting him earlier. Batman convinces Selina to infiltrate the club using his contact lens camera instead of doing it himself as Bruce Wayne, again. She rightfully calls him out for using her as bait, and he says nothing. Catwoman makes her way to the 44 Below elevator, which she somehow now has a keycard to, despite saying she doesn't work down there. Batman identifies the thug at the door, whom he also fought with the other night, as William Kenzie, a GCPD detective. As Selina makes her way through the club, Batman IDs some more city officials and sees a few of them doing the popular illegal drug in this film called drops. Drops are drugs you do through your eyes. Drops are fucking stupid, and in a movie this grounded and gritty, I don't understand why they don't just do cocaine or ecstasy or something. Selina attracts the attention of District Attorney Gilbert Coulson, who is high off his fucking rocker on drops, and tells Selina literally everything without her even asking, including mentioning the rat that Batman has only recently become aware of, and desperately needs to know more about. Fucking convenient, huh? Selina asks for more details about the rat, and dipshit gives them to her. A random waitress he's never seen before after just talking about how nervous he is about this very information getting out and Riddler knowing about it. Do desperate assholes like this exist? Yes. Yes, they do. Do I believe that a desperate, spineless simp like this could ascend to the position of district attorney in a cutthroat, mob-ruled, crime-infested town like Gotham? Fuck no. He fucking straight up tells her that they had a confidential informant who rolled over on mob boss Salvatore Maroni, and that's how the mayor, the commissioner, and Coulson himself were able to take down Sal and his drops operation. The biggest drug bust in GCPD history, and Riddler's rat was responsible. It's also the bit of information that connects Gil with Riddler's first 2 victims, indicating that he is probably next. Then, the dumb coked-out bitch next to Coulson says, "I don't want to talk about this. This is the same sort of talk that got that Russian girl disappeared." Oh my fucking god! Not only is that exactly the information Selina wanted to hear, but she literally just said, "I don't want to talk about it," and then talked about it! Not to mention, since she's clearly talking about Annika, that means that Annika knew about the rat, knew about Mitchell, Savage, and Coulson, confirming that if Batman had stayed focused and questioned Annika instead of chasing Selina, he could have saved 2 lives that have already been lost and found and protected the rest of Riddler's targets while he tries to track him down. Okay, I need to take a break here and explain the effects all these mistakes are having on our main character, Batman, the world's greatest detective. Well, not in this fucking movie, he ain't. Batman hasn't done fuck all to solve Riddler's clues, save his victims, or outsmart the Riddler in any way to get one step ahead of him like Batman often does in other media, being a genius and whatnot. All he's doing is chasing breadcrumbs Riddler leaves behind, never once questioning if maybe Riddler is purposely misleading him on a wild goose chase as he continues to stalk his prey while Batman is distracted chasing riddles. No, he just keeps taking whatever Riddler feeds him, and even then, it's not good enough to do anything useful or save anybody. This is hands down the dumbest Batman we have ever seen on screen. He's genuinely just a muscle-bound thug who punches criminals in the face and never has a clever thought enter his fucking skull. And this is the movie everybody keeps praising for finally giving us Detective Batman. He couldn't detect a clue if Riddler wrote it on his dick and swung it around in Batman's face. Anyway, I digress. Back to the plot. Selina abandons Coulson to interrogate the other waitress, but is interrupted by the big man himself, Carmine Falcone, the kingpin of Gotham City. He seems familiar with Selina, and she seems a bit uncomfortable at his touch. Batman picks up on this and starts grilling her for not telling him she has a connection to Falcone. Selina gets angry with him and takes out the contact, severing their connection. Selina leaves the club and Coulson attempts to chase her, but she leaves him on the sidewalk. We hear Riddler breathing inside Coulson's car, waiting for him to get in, which he does without checking the back seat, despite just telling Selina in the club how nervous and paranoid he is about Riddler targeting him with what he knows. It's a close call with how brain-dead Batman and Gordon have been so far, but Coulson might be the biggest retard in the movie. Also, how did Riddler get into the locked car without setting off an alarm? You can clone key fobs if you're tech-savvy enough, which I suppose we can assume Riddler is, given his use of computers, encrypted passwords, and websites. It's just not stated in the film at all. Riddler knocks Coulson out by smacking him over the head instead of injecting him with a sedative like he did Savage, and attaches some sort of device around his neck. As it zooms out from Coulson's car, we get our first look at Gotham's seawall, which apparently it has. Gotham is several stories below sea level for some reason, despite never having been portrayed that way in any other Batman media ever. I checked. We'll see if that becomes relevant later. Next, we see Gordon driving into an abandoned construction site that is labeled as being a part of the Gotham Renewal Project. He takes the elevator to the top where we see the bat signal. So it's not on top of GCPD like it normally would be, but we know it can't be because the rest of the police department don't trust Batman. Instead, it's on top of a construction site with no lock on the gate that pretty much anybody could access and use the signal as a trap. Say, a criminal, or just a random Batman fan, or say, the rest of the police who hate Batman. Nope, no security, just sitting up there. Fucking fantastic. Batman asks Gordon about a confidential informant on the Maroni case, the rat that they're both looking for. And Gordon only just now remembers that, oh yeah, there was a rat on that super famous case I worked at the two victims so far also worked on. I swear to God, am I taking crazy pills? Why does this detective lieutenant not know anything about how to investigate a crime? He was right there with Batman when they heard the rat clue with two victims dead who also worked that case. Fuck me, man. Batman says definitely don't go ask Coulson about it because reasons. Not good reasons, just reasons. Next, we see Bruce in the Batcave reviewing his conversation with Selina when Alfred walks in and is surprised to see Bruce in a suit and tie. He asks if Bruce Wayne will actually be making a public appearance, implying again that he does not do this often. Bruce says that he's attending the funeral for Mayor Mitchell because Riddler might be there since serial killers like seeing public reactions to their crimes. So, Bruce is going to the funeral, not to keep up appearances, but because he thinks Riddler might show up. Dressed as Riddler? Or do you think he might also be in civilian attire like yourself, meaning you wouldn't fucking know him if you saw him, you greasy-haired donut hole? And even if you did, Bruce, what then? You gonna arrest him as Bruce Wayne? Maybe you could point him out to the police, but that would still leave them with the question of how reclusive billionaire Bruce Wayne was able to identify the killer. Seriously, what is his plan here? Alfred uses this opportunity to show Bruce the work he once again did for him on Riddler's next cipher, because Bruce is a literal fetus and capable of doing his own detective work. Alfred says Riddler's Spanish is flawed, but that it translates directly to, "You are el rata alada." A rat with wings, Bruce correctly deduces with his remaining brain cell. Okay, so Bruce knows Spanish. Or at least some Spanish. More than I do, at any rate, because alada was new to me. Or so it would seem, as Alfred just pointed out that Riddler's Spanish is not perfect, and Bruce speaks Spanish. So he should definitely catch on, right now, with basic Year 1 Spanish, that the feminine ah sound at the end of a word requires the feminine pronoun la, not the masculine el. Riddler has made a grammatical mistake. But knowing how meticulous he is, Bruce might deduce that this is in fact not a mistake, and that maybe Riddler is trying to tell him something important. But nah. Instead, when Alfred calls rat with wings, a slang term for pigeon, Bruce's 1 megabyte brain power comes back with a stool pigeon, a slang term for an informant. Like a rat. Another word for informant, which Riddler has already given you, so maybe keep fucking guessing, Detective! Alfred, being the classy gentleman he is, notices that Bruce has forgotten his cufflinks and offers him his own, saying again that he needs to keep up appearances. Hint fucking hint, Bruce. And that you're still a Wayne. Bruce sees the Wayne W engraved on the cufflinks, and like a fucking asshole, he says to the man who raised him like his own son, "How about you, Alfred? Are you a Wayne?" Listen here, you snot-nosed little shit! Motherfucker, what is wrong with you? This is not Bruce Wayne. This moody little fuckstain is coming off a lot more like Jason Todd, an emo wannabe motorcycle gimp who doesn't appreciate how fucking lucky he is to have a father figure like Alfred in his life. Then, Alfred makes Bruce feel like an absolute dick by saying, "Your father gave them to me." And then Bruce doesn't say a fucking thing back because he just got his ass handed back to him on a silver platter by the classiest fuck in the DC universe. You don't deserve him! Bruce arrives at City Hall for the funeral to see a group of protesters holding signs with Riddler's question mark sigil on them and chanting, "No more lies." Oof, that doesn't bode well. Bruce sees a car pull up that lets out Penguin, Falcone, and an unknown woman with dark hair wearing Selina's boots. Oh shit, must be Selina, he's probably thinking. So, like the charming ladies' man he is, he fucking rushes the broad from behind like a bat rapist and gets stopped by Penguin and some goons. Falcone and the girl turn around, revealing it's not Selina. I think it might be that coke whore from the club who was hanging out with Gil? So, wait, does she have the exact same boots? That was already a dumb contrivance, but now what are we supposed to think? Wait, does every girl who works at the club have those boots? So Batman could have followed home any other random girl with those boots and been shit out of luck. What a fucking joke. Well, at the very least, this invalidates the boot connection entirely, because all Batman needed to know, which is still very lucky in and of itself, is that when Selina was in Penguin's office, she lingered on the photo of Annika with the mayor, and continued to linger on Batman because he was asking about her. This alone is a clear tell that Selina knew her. The focus on the boots was completely worthless then and now, but they purposely took time with the camera shots to focus on the boots for you, the audience, to notice that they had the same boots. The boots literally meant nothing. Great. Bruce and Carmine have a little conversation where it is revealed that when Bruce was a kid, his father, Dr. Thomas Wayne, saved Falcone's life from a gunshot wound to the chest because Falcone didn't want to go to a hospital. Interesting detail. Bruce proceeds inside, where he overhears a man deriding the mayor and the Gotham Renewal Program for not having helped his daughter when she was sick. Random. Or is it? It's not. Moving on. Bella Real, the now unopposed candidate for mayor, pulls Bruce to her side and begins telling him he's a piece of shit who doesn't do any philanthropic work or give any of his money to charity. Of fucking course he doesn't. Because we already took most of Bruce Wayne's other positive traits away, so why not make him a selfish piece of shit who takes no time to help the people of Gotham outside of punching the poor so that a benevolent, strong black woman can tell him he needs to do better? I'm calling her that because that's what she is. Bella Real gets no character development besides being the absolute paragon of virtue that she appears to be. I'm not racist. I'm sexist. Women shouldn't be in politics. Boom! Got her! Gordon brings up Coulson's disappearance to acting police chief Mackenzie Bach, right before that becomes relevant. How convenient. We hear a car engine revving and people screaming and gunshots from outside. For like 30 seconds. It's really drawn out to make sure you hear it before a car comes crashing in the front entrance and nearly hits the crowd. It swerves right before it gets anywhere near the mayor's son, and Bruce decides to tackle the kid for no reason. I guess it was supposed to look heroic, but if you look at this freeze frame, it was never going to hit him. On top of that, we saw the street outside not too wide, so for the car to have been causing a panic for 30 seconds, we would have had to heard it coming from like a block away at least. And if they had that much time, I don't believe for a second that police couldn't have shot out the tires or intercepted it with a police cruiser or any number of options they could have used to stop the vehicle. This scene only happens to raise suspense, but they could have found Coulson in his car anywhere. Hell, Riddler could have told them, he's in Central Park, bring Batman. The police pull their guns on the car and order the driver to step out, and it's Coulson. He has tape over his mouth, a bomb around his neck, a letter taped to his chest, and a phone taped to his hand that starts ringing. The letter is again addressed to the Batman. The police clear the venue and call in the bomb squad. The police send in an EOD bot to get a clear view of Coulson. At that same time, Batman arrives from the shadows. Somehow, Batman got past the police cordon. Because he's Batman, I guess? But Bach is clearly not happy about it, so why do they not move in and arrest him? Because then the film would be over, you silly cunt! Don't think about it! Turn your brain off and just have fun! Fucking kill me. Batman answers the phone and we get a video call between him and Riddler. Riddler says he wants to unmask this cesspool of a city, and he asks Batman if they can do it together, and that he's been trying to reach him, and that he's part of this too. Batman does not ask him what he means by this. He should. Instead, he just asks the dumbest question he can, which is, how am I a part of this? Because he keeps leaving you personal messages, you fucking dunce! Jesus hell! Riddler then addresses his followers because this video call is also being live-streamed. Wow. Maybe the police should track the IP address and find out where he's streaming from. But also, where the fuck is he posting the link to this that he isn't also being monitored on that site? I know very little about computers and the internet, but unless he's a master hacker extraordinaire, I doubt the Gotham cybercrime unit wouldn't be able to find him. Though, maybe not in time to save Coulson. There should be a throwaway line, at least. The DA is being held hostage on a livestream by a terrorist, that's all I'm saying. Riddler spurgs out on Coulson with his best Heath Ledger impression, and then we get to the game. 3 riddles in 2 minutes. If he gets them right, Riddler gives him the code for the lock on the bomb collar. The riddles don't actually matter, they're just a way of getting Coulson to confess. The last one is basically just, who's the rat? Which now, I'm confused as to whether Riddler knows who the informant is, or if he actually needs Coulson to tell him. This is very important to distinguish, because if he knows who the rat is already, then the entire climax of the film is unnecessary. Well, the first climax. The second climax is already unnecessary no matter what, but I digress. Coulson refuses to answer because according to him, the police protect the rat and will kill him if he talks. Then, he and Batman both die from a bomb to the face. But Batman gets better. To be clear, this should have killed Batman, even with his armor and his hands in front of his face. With the amount of force it would take to blow Batman across the room, the shockwaves alone would have liquefied his insides and killed him instantaneously. But Batman's armor is made of plot and mithril, so he's fine. Batman falls unconscious and the police take him into custody and leave him in an interrogation room. Not to the hospital, because his armor magically reconstituted all his organs for him, so he's in tip-top shape. A paramedic is checking on him, but they haven't taken his mask off. They only try to do that conveniently right as he regains consciousness so they can not do that. Bach reprimands Gordon for protecting Batman after he interfered in an active hostage situation and cost Coulson his life. What do you mean protecting him? There's 1 of Jim and 50 of you. Cuff Gordon and Batman and take his damn mask off already. The paramedic should have already done that while he was passed out to give him a proper medical examination. This is the second fucking time the cops pretend to want to get Batman out of the picture but don't because one guy says, "Come on guys, don't. He's my friend." Go fuck yourself, Gordo. Your boyfriend's going to jail. Batman sasses back at Bach, and it's not important, but I fucking love the way he delivers this line. Batman fights with the cops a bit more until Gordon gets in his face and tries to reason with him. He asks Bach to give them a minute alone so he can talk some sense into Batman, and instead of Bach saying, "Fuck no, bitch," and cuffing them both, he agrees. Gordon and Batman pretend to argue while secretly communicating how to help him escape. During this conversation, Batman eyes Officer Kenzie and tells Gordon he moonlights as muscle for Penguin. Gordon gives him a key to the room and lets Batman punch him in the face to make it look like it was a genuine escape attempt, even though he fucking gave him a key. The police immediately chase Batman as he heads for the roof to make his grand escape. On the roof, Batman pulls a cord on his suit that turns his cape into a realistic-looking wing glider suit. Okay, I appreciate the attempt to justify the cape as a piece of real-world equipment. Well done. Unfortunately, Batman has no idea how to use it properly and pulls his safety chute right as he's about to pass over a bus and under a bridge. Batman smashes his face into a bridge and a bus, rolls about 50 times over the asphalt, and fucking dies. But he gets better. In fact, he walks away from this. Damn, that's some good armor. Stops plot dead in its tracks. By the way, I keep bringing this up to point out that the film doesn't need to do this. It doesn't need to have Batman take these life-ending injuries and walk away from them. It could give him minor injuries and more vulnerable armor that allows him to get hurt but not killed from something more reasonable. Like if Batman had pushed Coulson away and ran before the bomb blew, I could believe it would give him a minor shock that might knock him out. Or if Batman's chute caught the bridge and bounced his back against it before he fell to the street. These would still be painful enough to illustrate how close he came to death without making it completely unbelievable. You hear me, Matt? You don't need to do nonsensical things just because they look cool. You can tone it down just a little. Okay, we need to establish something else now because after what just occurred in the police station, this should be a major turning point in the movie. Batman just assaulted the only police officer who supported him in front of the rest of the GCPD who already wanted him taken into custody, even though they didn't do it both times they had a chance to. This should mean that for the rest of the film, Batman can have zero cooperation or interaction at all with the police, including Gordon. That bridge is well and truly burned. He is now on his own for the duration of the film. Just fucking kidding! He immediately goes and turns on the bat signal to speak with Gordon in the completely unprotected construction site that pretty much any asshole with eyes could find just by driving towards where the bat signal is coming from till they find the right building. The police should be here. Gordon should be arrested and fired for aiding and abetting a fugitive, and Batman should be fucked. You cannot do this. You just screwed over any ability for Jim to sneak away and meet with Batman because he's a wanted man. And any work you two do together is now off the books, meaning you can't make any arrests, you can't call for backup, and none of what you find is going to be admissible in court. You guys are completely fucked. Batman should be working alone, and Jim should be secretly trying to keep the cops off his trail so he can find Riddler without worrying about law enforcement getting in his way. They attempt to solve this by saying that not only is there now an APB on Batman, but because of what Coulson said about the police protecting the rat, Gordon and Batman both don't trust any of the police, so they're totally fine doing this off the books. We don't even want their help anyway, so nyeh! Except, Gordon is a fucking cop, and the other cops know who he is, and that he has information on Batman. He has no anonymity like Batman, so if he does anything that Chief Bach hasn't authorized him to do, he's going down immediately. You cannot operate outside the law like Batman because everybody knows your face, fuckface. Anyway, they determined that because Kenzie is both a corrupt cop and a hired goon for the Penguin, that Penguin must be the rat. Because penguins have wings, so he must be the stool pigeon. I'm going to hold back on that. We're almost there. Gordon and Batman tail Kenzie and Penguin to a warehouse that they're using as a drug lab, keeping Sal Maroni's drops operation going even though it was supposed to be taken down years ago. The Maroni bus was a fake, and Gordon didn't know it even though drops are still being trafficked all around Gotham. Also, they followed them here super easy, so anyone could have found this operation at any time, but since we know the police are in on it, it makes sense that they're still working unimpeded. You know, unless there were, say, a crime-fighting vigilante around who wanted to end illegal drug trafficking in Gotham. Luckily, our furry dipshit detective only beats up street hoods. It doesn't do anything to fight corruption or organized crime. Lucky them. Unlucky them, it was so easy to follow them here that Catwoman shows up. Yay! She's here to steal some drug money from the Penguin, which makes sense for her, and I don't blame her. Although you think she would be more focused on finding Annika since they seemed so close. Batman confronts Catwoman and puts together for the first time that she worked in the club to get intel on scores to steal because she's, wait for it, a cat burglar. Then they find her dead girlfriend in a duffel bag in the back of the car with the money. Wait, so they killed her and then kept her body for like 2 days? Why not just dump her that night? Well, that might be the first stupid thing Penguin has done. Sad. I had such high hopes for him. Anyway, he makes up for it immediately by blasting Batman and Catwoman with an Uzi. Catwoman hides and Batman dies in a hail of machine gun fire. But he gets better. Like immediately. He's out cold on the ground for like 2 seconds, but then 1 frame later, he's gone. And those bullets bounce off the underside of his arms, in his pits, off his leather cowl, everywhere. If you needed any confirmation that the visual effects team don't give a fuck about what the different parts of the armor are made of, this is it. Any bullet that hits Batman, even if it's on his leather cowl or his regular pants, ricochets off like it was steel. Plot armor. Strongest stuff in the universe. Gordon tries to intervene and shoots down a couple of Penguin's goons. Penguin moves in on the car Catwoman is hiding behind, but then Batman teleports the Batmobile directly behind him. And now we are introduced to the best character in the film. A car. The Batmobile is absolutely epic, and I love everything about the design. I just wish it were in a better movie with a better driver. Batman revs up the engine and the afterburner to build up tension and atmosphere, and then he fucking waits. He waits for Penguin to get into his car and start escaping so he can chase him. What the fuck? Right now, Catwoman and Gordon are pinned down by gunfire. Penguin has about 4 goons, not including him and Kenzie. It would be difficult odds, but I feel like with some smoke bombs and some clever maneuvering, Batman and Catwoman could get the jump on them and take Penguin down right here and now so they can question him. But instead, he lets Penguin get in his car so we can have a cool chase sequence. And it would be cool if you hadn't completely assassinated Batman's character to achieve it. Batman roars off after Penguin while Jim Gordon is still being shot at and leaves him for dead. Are you fucking kidding me, Batman? This guy stuck his neck out for you, sacrificed his entire fucking career for you, and this is how you repay him? Fuck this guy. I don't know who he is, but he is not Bruce Wayne. Bruce does not treat his friends and allies this way over something as minuscule as an interrogation. This is unforgivable. This ruins all that was left of Batman's character. They could put a tracer on Penguin's car and track him down later. It's not a life or death scenario right now if they don't find him. Well, I guess it could be if Riddler's next victim gets killed before they solve his riddle, but that hasn't stopped Batman from letting all the others die while he chases people who don't need chasing. Now, I have to admit, the first time I watched this movie and every time since, even with all the criticisms I have now, I fucking love this car chase scene. It's thrilling and intense and looks fantastic, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole way through. In isolation, I could watch it over and over again. It's so well done. Right up until the ending. Keep in mind, this car chase is only happening because Batman let Penguin get away so he could chase him. So everything Penguin does in response to Batman chasing him, and I meant it when I said it before, makes sense for Penguin to do as a low-life criminal who only cares about himself and not going to jail. So, while Penguin is a piece of shit, I don't blame him for acting like one to keep Batman from taking him in. I blame Batman for being so irresponsible and allowing this madman the opportunity to take things this far. Penguin slams on his brakes to hit a semi-truck that causes it, an oil tanker, and several other cargo trucks and smaller sedans and SUVs to pile up until eventually the oil tanker ignites, causes a massive explosion that engulfs all the nearby vehicles, except for Batman, who manages to Evel Knievel his way off a flatbed. Batman slams into Penguin's car and sends it flying and spinning down the highway till it stops on its roof. I was left speechless by this in my most recent rewatch. At least 3 people are dead, if not more. Who knows how many dozens injured. Penguin could have very easily died from that crash. And Batman allowed all of this to happen. Just to get some information he could have gotten several times over in the movie already had he not made so many mistakes. This is inexcusable, and I don't know why Matt Reeves would write Bruce this way. He is not a hero in this film. He is a fucking monster, as bad, if not worse, than Penguin or Riddler. Not because he's malicious or sociopathic, but because he's negligent and reckless. People are dead who would be alive now if Batman did not exist. And not because some crazy supervillain executed them to get Batman to show his face, but because Batman put them in danger himself because he wanted to drive his awesome car. If Batman were any other action hero who didn't care so much about civilian casualties or collateral damage, this scene wouldn't be so bad. But it's Batman, for Christ's sake. Everything he does is to save lives. He's not supposed to end them so callously for so little reward. Disappointment doesn't even cover it. I'm heartbroken at what they've done to Batman. But the film is not over yet. So, onward we go. Oh, one last thing. Penguin dies in the car crash, but he gets better. But the civilians don't. They don't get better at all. Batman and Gordon take Penguin to a secluded spot to interrogate him. Yes, Gordon is alive somehow. They accuse Penguin of being the Rat, killing Annika, and running the drops business for the police. Penguin denies all 3 of these charges and doesn't falter, so we can assume he's at least somewhat telling the truth. If he didn't kill Annika, which we later find out is true, Kenzie must have been the one who had her body in his car, which is still stupid, but could make sense that he was disposing of it for someone else. But Oz is running the drops operation, so if he's not the Rat, how did he come to be in that position? Obviously, Falcone must have taken over the operation at some point and put Oz in charge, but how did all that play out? Maybe we'll find out later. We then get one of the best scenes in the movie where Penguin makes Batman and Gordon look like complete retards.
The symbol's in the maze right here. It says, "You are El Rata Alada."
You are El Rat that says that?
Why? You got something to tell us?
Yeah!
Like the worst Spanish I ever heard. What? It's La Rata. What is this, Riddler, stupid or something? Jesus. Look at you two. World's greatest detectives. Am I the only one here knows the difference between L and La? Jesus. No habla Espanol, fellas? Do me a favor, shithead. Shut up. You think he made a mistake?
He hasn't made mistakes.
A rat with wings. You know what that sounds like to me? A friggin' bat. Huh? You ever think of that?
Penguin tells them the proper translation should be La Rata, which triggers the first epiphany these two waterheads have had in their entire lives, that either Riddler made a mistake, or it was a purposeful message to Batman. Now, we covered this earlier before the funeral, but let's recap. Batman does know Spanish. He knew Rata Alada meant rat with wings. He didn't know it should be L instead of La, because if he had, he would have made this revelation 30 minutes ago in movie time. 30 minutes ago, Coulson was still alive, Batman and Gordon weren't wanted by the police, and a bunch of people weren't dead on the highway. If Batman were any kind of detective at all, the events of the last hour of the film don't need to occur, because Penguin pointing out the difference between L and La gives Batman the actual clue. You are El Rata Alada, which had he translated it would have said, you are a rat with wings. You, Batman, not anybody else, you are. Meaning the message is for you, and it has a deliberate grammatical mistake in Spanish to give us you are El instead of you are La. Because you are La doesn't sound like anything, but you are El sounds like URL, a web domain. It was a double meaning that said both you are a rat with wings, which as a bat he is, and that is the name of a website you should find. URL equals rataalada.com, which is a private message server that Batman can use to communicate directly with the Riddler. So, when Riddler told him, I've been trying to reach you, he fucking meant it. He sent him a direct chat link that he thought Batman would have been smart enough to solve the riddle to. The fact that Bruce thought, you are El Rata Alada, meant somebody else was the rat, which is something Riddler already fucking told you, is insane. You know he speaks in riddles. You should always be looking for mistakes or inconsistencies in his messages, because it could always be a secret code or a double meaning. That's one of the best parts about Riddler as a character, is that you always have to consider what he chooses to tell you on multiple levels. Having a direct line to Riddler means that they could have cleared up a whole bunch of miscommunications that will be important later, and Batman might have been able to save some lives. And he only figured it out because fucking Penguin told him. Penguin! Penguin is better at riddles and Spanish than fucking Batman. He is the smartest character in the film, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Oz is in the house. Batman then slides into Riddler's DMs, and Riddler asks him if he's found out who the rat is. So, does Riddler know who the rat is? I began to doubt this for a minute, because if he doesn't, then it makes sense why he wanted Batman to help him find out. But if he does know, it creates a major plot hole that we can discuss later when it's revealed. Batman asks if it's Penguin, and Riddler says, interesting, but you're missing the big picture. I need to show you more. Which heavily indicates, no, Penguin is not the rat and not who Riddler is looking for. Which, if Riddler knows that, means he must know who the informant is to know it isn't Penguin. Okay, plot hole confirmed. More on that later. Riddler gives Batman another riddle to tell him who is his next target. Batman immediately figures out, halfway, because he never solves anything completely on his own. The answer is orphan. Bruce Wayne knows exactly one orphan. Him. But he doesn't make that connection, so he goes to the old Wayne orphanage located in the previous Wayne estate to find out more. And they leave Penguin behind! What the fuck is wrong with you two? Let's go down the list of crimes we can tie Penguin to after what just happened. Possession, production, and sale of illegal narcotics, attempted murder of a police officer, obstruction of justice, possession of the dead body of a missing person, money laundering, reckless driving, reckless endangerment, and mass vehicular manslaughter. Now, I haven't forgotten what I pointed out earlier. Both Batman and Gordon have effectively burnt all bridges with the police, which is why they were out here on their own in the first place. But if they have any sense of duty or responsibility to the pursuit of justice, they should at the very least put in an anonymous tip to Penguin's location and tie him up securely till the police arrive. Oz's car is still on the bridge among all that wreckage that hopefully the police are already on scene investigating to determine the cause of the crash. Just hand them Penguin on a silver platter. That might go a long way in repairing the relationship between the two of them and the cops. There's no excuse for letting this monster go. Oz, however, very intelligently, gets out of his bonds and leaves the scene of the crime before anyone can connect him to it and hides out in the Iceberg Lounge where the police can't touch him because it's heavily guarded and they would need a warrant. Good boy, Oz. They arrive at the orphanage and Batman has the gall to tell Gordon, "No guns," and Gordon rightfully tells him to shove it because only Batman is dumb enough to handicap himself by not using modern weapons. They search the orphanage and find a room full of crackheads. Oh, excuse me. Drop heads. So fucking lame. Then Batman hears Riddler's theme song coming from the next room and goes inside to investigate. Inside, they find a digital projector playing... Wait, hold up. A digital projector plugged in and turned on and making noise right next to a room full of homeless drug addicts? Fuck off. They would have stolen that shit the minute Riddler was done setting it up. Hell, they probably would have robbed and murdered Riddler's nerdy little ass the minute he walked into this den of thieves. Anyway, the projector is playing an old clip of Thomas Wayne at a campaign rally announcing his run for mayor and the birth of the Gotham Renewal Project, a $1 billion donation from the Wayne Foundation to public works that will be used to improve the city, whether he wins the mayoral race or not. Damn, Thomas is a saint. Be a shame if somebody murdered him and stole all his money, which is exactly what happened. He was shot, Mitchell became mayor, and he and his cronies used that money to fund whatever the hell they wanted for the last 20 years. Batman sees the sins of the father painted on the wall in green, and way too late determines that Riddler's next target is Bruce Wayne. Orphan should have given that way immediately, and you should have gone straight home. Hope nothing bad happens before that. So, wait, we understand why Riddler wanted to kill Mitchell, Savage, and Coulson, but why Bruce? Because of Thomas Wayne's generous donation that was stolen and misused by other politicians who succeeded him? Thomas and Bruce didn't do anything wrong. It was the other assholes you already killed, so what the fuck? I guess we'll have to wait for Riddler to tell us why his motivation suddenly changed. Bruce rushes home to the tower and calls from the car to warn Alfred. The maid answers and tells him it's too late. Alfred was injured by a small mail bomb intended for Bruce. In fact, he was hospitalized even though he threw the bomb away from him and took cover. He took more damage from a smaller bomb that was farther away from him than Bruce did by taking one right to the face. Ugh. Like I said already, Orphan should have tipped him off that Bruce was Riddler's next target. So the slideshow at the orphanage didn't add any motivation as to why Riddler was targeting Bruce, he just is. So Batman should have rushed home immediately. The maid says that the bomb went off an hour ago, presumably between Batman and Penguin murdering a bunch of innocent motorists on the highway. He actually could have saved Alfred if he had a fucking brain. What else is new? This whole movie's been like a Police Squad episode with our hero bumbling from one crime to the next. Riddler's letter to the Batman reads simply, "See you in hell." Oh shit, does he know Batman is Bruce? He just tried to kill Bruce Wayne and left a threatening note for Batman. And we have no reason to think Riddler has any love for Batman, right? Could this be his final stroke with his work completed? No, because he still hasn't dealt with the rat, but if he dealt with the rat when he should have, I'll explain later, then yes, this easily could have been the end of Riddler's plan. Alfred is in the hospital being stabilized, and Bruce takes this opportunity to go home and fuck up the dining room floor while Alfred isn't looking. He splays out a bunch of photos and spray paints information that Riddler has given him and makes the excellent deduction from the sentence, "Renewal is a lie," that he should look into the Gotham Renewal Fund. Ace work there, detective. Turns out, since it was Thomas Wayne who started it, Bruce has a bunch of files relating to Renewal, but before he can read them, Catwoman is once again injected into the plot to distract him and waste everybody's time. Apparently, she kept the contact lens and used it to set up a meeting with Batman. Batman waits for Catwoman at the Bat Signal site, proving once again that anyone can get up here at any time, no problem. Catwoman asks Batman to help her go after Detective Kenzie since Annika's body was found in his car, so he must know what happened. Batman declines and basically tells Selina it's her fault Annika is dead because she got her involved with the wrong people. Jesus Christ, Batman. You're right, but that's fucking cold. Also, never mind. You're fucking wrong, because you could have saved Annika if you had just stayed focused and questioned her when you had the chance instead of chasing Selina. You could have gotten her to a safe house while you acted on the super valuable information she could have given you, and most of this fucking movie wouldn't have needed to happen. Batman tells her that choices have consequences, and to this, Selina says, "Choices? Whoever you are, you obviously grew up rich." So, is she implying that only rich people have any agency and therefore poor people who commit crimes shouldn't be held accountable for their actions? As a criminal, she might really believe this, but it felt a little tone-deaf and entitled for someone who grew up poor and on her own. Batman further presses Selina on how she got so close to Falcone to get the money that she stole, and angrily blurts out that he owes her that money because Falcone is her father. She tells Batman the story of how she was conceived when her mother worked at the club, and how her mother was murdered when she was a child, and how they never caught the guy. None of this matters because Selina and her subplot don't matter, and she shouldn't even be in this movie. It's completely extraneous and unnecessary to the Riddler story. However, Selina says for abandoning her that Falcone owes her that money, and Batman says he's sorry for misjudging her, implying that he agrees with the sentiment. No, Batman. Familial relations do not make stealing dirty drug money okay. You're supposed to be a crime fighter. Catwoman is still wrong, even if Falcone is a bad dad. Catwoman tries to convince Batman to help her take down Kenzie for killing Annika and says something racist out of nowhere for no reason. Then mentions something about Thomas and Bruce Wayne that forces Batman to ask what she's talking about, and she tells him to go watch the news, so he does. Oh, but before that, they kiss. It's unearned, and they have no chemistry, and it's unnecessary. And she just implied that he was rich, and she can see he's white, and just expressed distaste for white, privileged assholes who take all the attention away from lower-class victims like her and her mother and Annika, but she kisses him anyway. Women just don't know what they want, huh? Back at the Batcave, Bruce watches Riddler's latest smear video that the news is still playing on air for him. I'm not advocating for censorship, but at a certain point, when do you have an obligation to not platform a dangerous terrorist? You know what I mean? Riddler reveals that 20 years ago, when Thomas Wayne was running for mayor, a reporter uncovered some dirt about Martha's family, the Arkhams. When Martha was a child, her mother murdered her father and then committed suicide. On top of this, Martha herself was in and out of mental institutions most of her life. Thomas wanted to stop this reporter from revealing their dirty laundry and supposedly had him murdered with the help of Carmine Falcone. Oh, okay. Now we have a little more context for why Riddler would think the Waynes are scum and target Bruce. Except he asks Bruce on air to answer for his father's crimes, even though he already tried to kill him earlier with a bomb, which, had it been successful, would mean Bruce wouldn't even find out about this scandal with his parents because he'd be fucking dead. Riddler, you're making less and less sense here. Bruce finally shows up at the Iceberg Lounge as Bruce Wayne and gets in immediately with no problems because he's incredibly famous. Using the status he holds in his civilian identity not only gets him into the club, but gets him a face-to-face meeting with Carmine Falcone, no questions asked. Why the fuck hasn't he been doing this the whole time? Because he doesn't care about his family legacy and me. If I wear eyeliner and listen to grunge and I'm not like other girls, fucking faggot-ass vampire loser! Okay, I'm cool. Bruce is led into Carmine's penthouse above the club, and oh look, Penguin is here! Safe and off scot-free because you fucking let him go! Good job, hero! Carmine tells everyone to leave so he and Bruce can talk, and Bruce asks about what Riddler said about his father. Carmine confirms it and implies that Salvatore Maroni not only hired the reporter to smear Bruce's parents, but that he also had them killed because he thought Falcone helping Thomas out meant his #1 criminal rival would have the new mayor in his pocket. Bruce then goes to the hospital and waits for Alfred to wake up from his coma so that he can fucking yell at him for not telling him his dad was a piece of shit. Fuck you, Bruce! This guy almost died because of you! Alfred wakes up and tells Bruce that Falcone lied. Go figure. Thomas didn't ask him to kill the reporter. Falcone did it of his own accord to have blackmail on Thomas. He says he doesn't know for sure if Maroni killed his parents, but that Thomas was a good man. Bruce feels bad and blah 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 blah. They kiss and make up. These scenes are a waste of time to try and fill in the mandatory second act low point they didn't bother to write well, where Bruce doubts himself. It's all very contrived and unearned and leads nowhere because it's just another shallow misdirect to give Riddler personal motivation to hate Bruce Wayne, even though none of it is Bruce's fault. Andy Serkis is fucking wasted in this movie, and so is Alfred. Moving on. Batman and Gordon both show up at the tower where the bat signal is at the same time because it's on and neither of them triggered it, proving once again that this is a terrible spot with terrible security and it should have gotten both of them arrested or killed by now. At the top, they find Catwoman beating the shit out of Detective Kenzie, who she managed to kidnap and drag up here all by herself even though she's a midget who weighs 90 pounds soaking wet. And this is where the movie decides to shit itself once again. Selina says she found her phone on Kenzie's person and that Annika called her phone the night she was kidnapped and left her a voice message. They play the message, and it reveals Carmine Falcone asking Annika about what Mitchell told her. She says that he told her about the deal Mitchell made with Falcone to roll over on Maroni and take down his drops business, which involved Savage and Coulson as well, confirming that she knew this the whole time and could have told Batman, which is why everyone was interested in her. Then we hear Falcone strangling her to death. Then the message ends. Holy shit. Okay, this is going to take a minute to sort through. First of all, when she was taken from the apartment, was she alive? If she was, and they interrogated her at the club, that means Kenzie already had Selina's phone. It also means he didn't take Annika's phone away from her, even though he kidnapped her, and that she managed to call Selina, hide her phone while Falcone was talking to her until he killed her. Then they found out she called Selina's phone, which they already had, didn't delete the voicemail, and didn't destroy the phone. So that's one possible retarded scenario. The other is that they had the conversation at Annika's apartment, meaning Annika called Selina right as they were breaking in, hid her phone from them till it was over, and she was dead. And then, when they found it, realized she just left an incriminating message for Selina, ransacked that apartment to find her phone, which luckily Selina left behind, and then still did not delete the message or destroy the phone, then took Annika's body from the apartment. The second scenario makes slightly more sense, but still has the monumentally stupid contrivance of these professional criminals keeping evidence that incriminates them instead of just destroying it. I'm going to jump ahead a bit to make it clear how stupid and impossible this phone message plot point is. This message is the piece of evidence that exposes Falcone as the informant and as Annika's murderer, and allows Batman and Gordon to arrest him later. This phone message should not exist, no matter how it played out. There is no excuse for the bad guys being this stupid. It is the sole object that leads to their demise later. They absolutely should have gotten rid of it. This is a plot hole. Furthermore, this all hinges on the mayor, like the DA, being a pussy-whipped dipshit who tells any girl who will fuck him all about the crimes he's committed. And Annika, granted, she was a scared foreign waitress who seemed naive and not nearly as tough as Selina, told Falcone exactly what Mitchell told her with no torture or coercion of any kind, even though what she knows incriminates Falcone specifically, the most feared mobster in the city. She may have given it up that easily, but so did Mitchell, and so did the phone message. That's too many required fuck-ups to achieve this absurd outcome. There's so many ways this information should not have been able to be obtained, and not just one of these improbable things happen. Multiple things that shouldn't happen so that they can have a smoking gun on Falcone in the third act. But sadly, we're not done yet, so let's press on. Our dipshit detectives finally glean from this impossible phone message that Falcons have wings too, and that Falcone is the rat. Great job, fellas. Kenzie then tries to explain that Falcone doesn't work for the city works for him. How did he achieve this? Through Renewal, a huge charitable fund with no oversight, perfect for bribes, money laundering, and everybody got a piece. But Falcone wanted more, so he got all Riddler's victims to go after Maroni's business, which made all their careers and allowed Falcone to install them as his puppets. What? Renewal is a public works project controlled by the city, which is controlled by the mayor. Unless Falcone has some kind of dirt on Mitchell, Savage, and Coulson, he has absolutely no access to Renewal or any ability to decide what happens with it. But we get no indication of blackmail. Also, if he was blackmailing them before Mitchell took office, they didn't have control over Renewal till afterwards. So how did any of that work? He says Falcone controlled them through Renewal, but he has no access to Renewal. Even once they used Falcone's intel to take down Maroni, the three of them would have had all the power and money and wouldn't need to do a damn thing, Falcone says. In fact, they could have taken down the drops business for real and told Falcone he was lucky to stay out of prison and to fuck off, and there's nothing he'd be able to do about it because what they did was not illegal. It's perfectly within the purview of the law to use a confidential informant to go after another criminal organization. Using Falcone as the rat to take down Maroni was both legal and a good thing to do. Nothing corrupt about it. The only thing that incriminates them is keeping the drops business going with Falcone and Penguin in charge and taking a cut which they laundered through the Renewal Fund, which they didn't have to do at all. Okay, so literally everybody involved in this film is a horrible evil retard who managed to amass all this power despite having no brains. Awesome. In real life, a need for money is what usually allows politicians to be corrupted by outside powers like lobbyists or big corporations or criminal syndicates. Politicians take the bad people's money to win elections, and as a result, they owe the bad people their loyalty later. But in this case, Mitchell had all the money he needed and all the power he could want when he won the election and became mayor. So Falcone would have had zero leverage on him. Falcone wants the Renewal money from Mitchell, not the other way around. So I guess you could say greed was their downfall, but that's kind of my point. They don't need anything more from Falcone. They were in the position of power over Gotham's criminals and chose to give it up to be evil and greedy and take more money from illegal drug trafficking that they didn't even need. Catwoman decides to kill Kenzie and Falcone, and Batman says no. He then watches her put her fucking foot on Kenzie's chest when he's tied to a chair next to a ledge and doesn't stop her from kicking him off till it's too late. So she escapes while him and Gordon pull Kenzie back up onto the ledge. Batman says he needs to go stop Catwoman from killing Falcone, so he gives Gordon the phone with the evidence to incriminate him and runs after her. He also says they need to do what Riddler says and bring Falcone into the light. Why? After everything that's happened, why would you think following Riddler's instructions is a good idea? Fuck me, we're almost at the end. You can do this. You can do this. Okay, so, Selina takes Kenzie's gun and gets dolled up to enter the club and talk to Falcone. The bouncer says no, and she says to tell him it's about Annika. Oh my god, no! He will kill you if you ask about the girl he murdered to save his own ass! Why would you do that? But it works somehow, and her and Falcone have a little chat. Meanwhile, Batman takes his armor off to sneak in through the front door for a third time because the guards are actual vegetables, and makes his way into the electrical room to put his gear back on and cut the power to give himself an advantage. Conveniently, he cuts the power right as Selina tries to shoot Falcone, and she misses. Oh, also, Gordon gave the phone message to the news, so Falcone is fucked. Batman makes his way up to the penthouse, and then this bullshit scene happens. Batman takes machine gun fire to the face, chest, and dick and fucking dies. But he gets better. Falcone gets the drop on Selina and tries to kill her, but Batman stops him and her. He takes Falcone outside where Gordon is waiting with all the GCPD who apparently are not corrupt and don't want to arrest Gordon or Batman for all their crimes. Penguin is also here, talking shit, and the police don't seem interested in arresting him either. Then Falcone talks shit back, and Penguin decides to commit suicide by cop. But he gets better. When Penguin draws his weapon, we hear gunfire, but it didn't come from him. Penguin finally gets put in cuffs, but don't worry, he'll be out again later. Falcone is shot and falls on the sidewalk under a lone streetlight while Batman watches him die. He looks up and says, "Bring him into the light, and you'll find where I'm at," echoing Riddler's last riddle. He looks to a nearby apartment building and sees a man with a rifle in the top window. He immediately grapples up to the top hall window and kicks in the door to the apartment where the shot came from. He's found Riddler's hideout. He was right next to the Iceberg Lounge the whole time. The cops come in right behind Batman, and Gordon gets a call on the radio saying someone spotted Riddler going into a diner right next door. They all converge on Riddler and put him in cuffs. Riddler gave himself up. Okay, a lot of things are going to come to light here all at once now that Riddler is in custody, so let's take them one by one. So Riddler was operating from an apartment right outside the club this whole time. That's how he was able to get photos of Mitchell and the others, because he was right next door to the place where they did most of their dirty business. Now that he's gotten his final target, Carmine Falcone, the last person alive who was involved with the misuse of the renewal fund, he turns himself into police custody. We can assume from this that he has completed his mission and is content with facing justice for his crimes. We'll operate on that assumption as we move forward. The police and Batman are going through Riddler's belongings in the apartment and collecting evidence. Batman sees some records about renewal. Gordon goes to Riddler's journals, and another detective confirms Riddler's identity as Edward Nashton, a forensic accountant at KTMJ, an accounting firm. I had to Google KTMJ to know anything more about it because it's not in the film, which is a mark against the movie because I shouldn't need third-party material to make any sense of what the movie tells me. KTMJ is described by the Batman Wiki as the oldest and biggest accounting firm in Gotham that specializes in the city's taxes. Okay, so they are a firm that does accounting work for the city. Fair enough, but I wish the film made that clearer because if it was a private accounting firm, that would be a problem. However, the film never tells us what Riddler noticed specifically that made him suspicious enough to investigate the renewal fund and expose the money laundering being done by the mayor and others. Instead, I once again had to Google references from the prequel novel and comic book that tie into the film. Apparently, it was a series of payments of suspicious amounts that went into accounts belonging to the mayor, commissioner, DA, Falcone, and probably others. So he saw strange transactions but had no hard evidence of any fraud or money laundering. He managed to uncover documents about the Arkham's mental health history and take incriminating photos of his victims to blackmail them, but it seems like he didn't actually have any evidence to prove his theories of renewal corruption correct, even though they were. Not only is this a massive piece missing from the film, but it isn't even filled in by the third-party material. We don't actually know how Riddler knows what he knows. He just guessed correctly. Gordon begins reading from one of Riddler's journals and finds a passage that mentions him finding a document relating to renewal that piqued his interest. Again, we don't get any details on what he found. Batman finds one last letter from Riddler in a cage with a bat, and inside is the murder weapon he used to kill Mayor Mitchell. He wanted Batman to find it specifically, not the cops, but Batman alone. Which is dumb, because he knew the police would be the ones who had control over the scene, not Batman. But we'll get into that in a minute. Batman says this isn't over. Then some fucking nerd analyst on Riddler's computer says, "Oh man, he's been posting all kinds of stuff online. He's got like 500 followers. Real fringe types." Ugh. Hollywood, I know you don't understand the internet, so please don't try to act like you do. 500. I mean, I'm not one to talk, I have basically none, but 500 is not a lot. His final post is an encrypted video that they can't access without a password, but somehow all his followers accessed it, so the password would probably be in the chat. Police computer analysts should be able to get in as well, but fuck it. Batman is staring at Riddler's wall, which has photos of him as a child, and Riddler as one of the orphans who were there at Thomas Wayne's announcement of the renewal program that was supposed to help them. There are also news clippings about Batman next to the photos of Bruce, and he begins to suspect that Riddler knows who he is. Because Batman is a retard who forgot what happened earlier in the movie, but we'll get to it. Gordon gets a call from Arkham Asylum telling him Riddler is requesting a visit from the Batman. Batman goes to Arkham and meets face-to-face with the Riddler. Now, how is Riddler already incarcerated in a mental asylum when he was just arrested for murder hours ago? I'm not a lawyer, but I did work in law enforcement for a time, and I continue to work closely with them in a medical/mental health environment today. When someone is arrested for a crime, they typically are held in a police holding cell or the county jail until they can have a trial scheduled. This can take days or weeks typically. If you're arrested for murder or multiple murders, you are unlikely to be eligible for bail and will most likely be held until your court date. Only once you've had an opportunity to speak with your lawyer and form a defense strategy would you even be able to consider the possibility of pleading mental illness as a motivation for your crimes and suggest that you belong in a mental health facility rather than a prison. My point is, you don't get arrested for murder and end up in Arkham Asylum the same night. Riddler would be held either at the police station or the county jail. This will be important later. Riddler tells Batman, "I told you I'd see you in hell," meaning he was referring to Arkham. He says he's felt invisible his whole life and that people will remember him now. They'll remember both of them. Bruce Wayne. He continues to say Bruce's name slowly and ominously for like a full minute between describing his upbringing as an orphan and how Thomas Wayne promised to use the renewal money to help the orphanage. He explains that Bruce losing his parents took all the attention away from the orphans like him who needed help, and that Bruce had all the money and resources in the world and didn't need the public sympathy. He resents Bruce for being famous and getting more sympathy than him. This scene attempts to build up suspense as Bruce tries to mask his concern in front of the security cameras that Riddler might know who he is. But it's all bullshit because Riddler says, "He's the only one we didn't get. But we got the rest of them, didn't we?" Okay, Batman asks why Riddler wrote him, and Riddler seems confused. Riddler says they took them down together, and that they make a great team. He says that he never could have gotten Falcone out of there because he's not physical, and that he needed Batman to use the pieces he collected to make them afraid and make them listen. He says that Batman inspired him. Oh, fuck. We have a lot to unpack here before we continue. This scene recontextualizes the events of the entire movie and the motivations of both Riddler and Batman and how they have acted thus far. Okay, so Riddler thought he was leaving clues for Batman, who he viewed as his accomplice that was taking the physical steps needed to expose the crimes of the corrupt officials Riddler was murdering. He says that he needed Batman for this because he is not a physically capable agent like Batman is. First things first, does Riddler thinking this make any sense at all if he's an intelligent person? I say no. 2 years into Batman's career, and not much is known about him except that he beats on criminals exclusively. There is probably reason to suspect that he works with the police based on the existence of the Bat Signal, and the fact that Riddler left physical clues addressed to Batman, specifically at crime scenes where he knows the police will take custody of all the evidence, so only they could give the evidence to Batman. Riddler's plans only work if Batman is aligned with the police, who Riddler believes to be corrupt. That alone should dispel the thought that he and Batman share similar goals. Secondly, Riddler says he needs Batman's help because he's not physically capable of carrying out his plans himself. But this is an absolute fucking lie. Throughout the entire film so far, Riddler has scaled buildings, beaten men to death, drugged them, kidnapped them, and snuck in and out of highly secured areas all on his own with no help. He's a fucking liar. He is very physical and does not need Batman at all to accomplish his goals. The one case you could make for Batman being of any assistance was bringing Falcone out of the club, which they have mentioned many times throughout the film that Falcone almost never leaves because he's afraid of somebody trying to take a shot at him. So the implication is he needed Batman's brute force to get him outside. There's a huge problem with that theory that I hinted at earlier. From what Riddler has been giving Batman, it's safe to assume that he already knew Carmine Falcone was the Rat. If that's the case, the last hour of the film was unnecessary because Carmine already left the Iceberg Lounge earlier in the movie of his own accord, when he attended Mayor Mitchell's funeral. He already killed Mitchell and Savage and had Coulson prepped and ready for the next riddle for Batman, so when Falcone left the club to go to the funeral, Riddler could have shot him from his apartment outside the club just like he does in the final act of the film. He did not need Batman's help at all, and he had no reason to believe Batman was on his side this entire time. Throughout this movie, Riddler has shown intelligence and cunning and logical thinking and motivations, so why now do we suddenly believe he would have such a delusional perception of events?
No! This is not how this was supposed to go!
Oh. Autistic screeching. He's crazy. And retarded. Riddler is a crazy autistic retard. Not a cunning, devious mastermind. Well, fuck me for getting invested in this interesting intellectual rival to our hero. And now that Batman knows Riddler is crazy and thought they were pals, we now know he had no reason to believe Riddler knew his identity because he hates Bruce Wayne, tried to kill him with a bomb earlier, and left a letter at the scene of Wayne's attempted murder for Batman telling him to meet him here at Arkham, which he couldn't have known was where he would end up, because he definitely shouldn't have, expecting to meet his friend Batman in person. So that intense scene we just got was total fucking bullshit. Batman tells Riddler he's a deranged moron and Riddler has a tism attack. Riddler says they were going to be safe here and they could watch the whole thing play out. Batman doesn't understand, and Riddler tells him he left it all there for him to see and that Batman isn't as smart as he thought he was. Then he starts singing and Batman tries to punch him through glass. Batman returns to Riddler's apartment and we get his very first use of a Batarang the whole film. He uses it to cut crime scene tape. That's it. Fuck you, movie. Martinez catches Batman trespassing and as per usual does nothing. Seriously, are you the only cop who does door duty? Anyway, Martinez then begins casually chatting with the guy he's been vehemently against the whole film so he can casually mention that the murder weapon used to kill Mitchell is a carpet tool. A tucker, specifically. Now why, might you ask, would Riddler use such a specific tool to kill only one victim? Why, to let Batman know there's a secret blueprint for his master plan under the carpet in his apartment they just recently found, of course. I mean, isn't it obvious? No? Yeah, I don't fucking get it either. Under the carpet, Batman finds a map of Gotham with several locations marked with blinking lights around the city perimeter and "A Real Change" in big bold letters written across the map. "A Real Change" is Bella Real's campaign slogan, and the secret password to Riddler's encrypted 4chan message to his 500 followers. Ooh-wee! Now we get the big reveal. Riddler is an autistic, anarchist, incel, anon neckbeard radicalizing the underprivileged and downtrodden losers of Gotham into his doomsday prepper gun cult that's going to attack all the other poor and innocent people of Gotham instead of the rich elite because they're fucking retarded. Riddler has parked several vans lined with explosives and remote detonators along Gotham's seawall, and they're set to blow at the same time as the mayoral inauguration happening in Gotham Square Garden tonight. Riddler spent all that time rooting out all the corrupt officials who misused the Gotham Renewal Fund, but now has decided at the last minute that even immaculate perfect icon of hope and change Bella Real can't fix Gotham, and she's probably a corrupt liar too. So he's going to flood the city and wait for everyone to take shelter at the garden, where his followers who are dressed just like him and armed with rifles will start summarily executing random civilians and assassinate Bella Real before she can take office. Because fuck it! Riddler also says when the flooding starts, the people who manage to survive will seek higher ground at Gotham Square Garden. But it's literally sunken into the floor below street level. What the fuck happened here? Riddler had a plan and solid motivations that, despite his grisly methods, serviced a noble goal he was trying to achieve. He was trying to rid Gotham of the corrupt politicians that kept it poor and crime-ridden and stole money away from the citizens who needed it most. It seemed like Riddler was a villain who wanted to help people but just didn't know when he was crossing the line. Now he just seems like a crazy asshole who wants to murder people just for the fun of it. He's not a noble sword of vengeance. He's a crazed anarchist who thinks mass death and destruction is the solution to a broken system. And the worst part is that he might have genuinely affected change in the system by eliminating these key figures of crime and corruption in the city. He didn't need to go even further and massacre innocent people who had nothing to do with it. Now he's just a mass-murdering maniac. Way to ruin your own villain. Also, Riddler has 500 loyal followers who have his exact outfit and are on board with his unmask the lies agenda and are willing to kill for him. If Riddler truly isn't physical, why didn't he just have his followers do all his killings and kidnappings for him? I reiterate again, he did not need Batman at all. He has an army of minions at his disposal. That would also have played much better if you wanted him to be the cerebral, intellectual villain whose strength is in his mind, not his body. Also, how the hell did a bunch of armed men in masks infiltrate the venue and take position on top of the rafters during a campaign event with police and security all over the place? I could believe maybe one guy might be able to sneak through, but this is a small firing squad full of goons. I dare say they might draw some attention at an event as important as an election night. On top of all that, this is the reason Riddler got himself caught, because he thought that the only place he would be safe from the Flood was Arkham Asylum because it's on a hill outside of the city. Okay, but so is any other hill outside of the city. Just leave the city. Then your plan can still take place, and you don't have to go to prison. And as we already covered, there was not only no guarantee he would be placed in Arkham that night, but it was downright impossible that he would be. Instead, he would most likely be in a holding cell in a police station in the middle of the city right as it flooded. Riddler is fucking retarded. And this is also the reason he used the carpet tool to leave a clue for Batman to find out his plan and meet him at Arkham. He didn't need to do any of this. He could have not left clues at all, because as we've established, he didn't actually need Batman's help and had no reason to think they were friends. He had no reason to leave any clues unless he was taunting Batman like Riddler normally does. Honestly, the only reason to get caught was so he could meet Batman, which also makes no sense, because he should hate Batman. This moron isn't Riddler, but we'll talk more about that when we get to characters. At the garden, lawbreaker Selina Kyle listens to a cop when he tells her to stop on her motorcycle that can outrun most cars because the streets are flooding, and she needs to go inside the garden with the other morons who thought it would be safe here. Gordon arrives on the scene after being told by Martinez what Riddler plans to do and tries to get the place locked down and get the mayor out. Riddler's snipers already have a clear shot on Bella Real and they don't take it, for some reason. They also rig themselves harnesses to keep them from falling off the platform so that Batman doesn't get called a murderer later when he throws them off indiscriminately. Gordon finds the mayor as a fire chief says that the garden does not work as a shelter of last resort if the seawall comes down. So why did Riddler and Bella both think that it would? Who isn't retarded in this movie? Can anyone tell me that? Gordon tells Bella they're under attack and they need to get out of here, and she ignores what he said and says this complete non sequitur.
So we can get everyone in.
It's not safe for you here. We need to get you out, Miss Real.
I'm not going anywhere.
We're under attack, man.
Exactly. It's the problem with this city. Everyone's afraid to stand up and do the right thing, but I'm not. Excuse me.
Ma'am.
How the fuck is that a response to a cop telling you people are trying to murder you? And as though God himself wanted to prove me right, the dumb bitch walks out on stage and immediately gets shot. Gordon drags her ass backstage and the Riddler goons just start shooting random people. But then, Batman joins in on the terrorism and sets off a bunch of explosives that destroy the glass roof of the arena and rains millions of shards of glass down on the innocent people seeking refuge. What the fuck is going on? Then a big dumb fight happens because it's time for the extraneous fourth act action sequence. Batman's plot armor continues to hold its integrity as he takes down the goons one by one, and not a single bullet hurts him. Until, of course, the one genius who brought a double-barreled shotgun to a sniping mission shoots Batman point-blank in the chest with both barrels. Then bullets hurt him. Suddenly. For the first time. Funny, he seemed really staggered by this revolver here, but he got shot in the back with a shotgun right here and seemed fine after. And took multiple barrages from submachine gun fire here and walked right into and through that just fine. But a submachine gun of the same caliber knocked him out cold here, and then the shotgun sends him flying back and knocks the wind out of him here. But the high-powered rifle rounds Batman tanked prior to the shotgun had less effect than the pistol caliber rounds he's been taking from handguns and submachine guns the whole movie. Can I ask you guys something? How the fuck do guns work? Just kidding, I know exactly how they work, and the answer is consistently. It's literally a science. Pistol rounds are less powerful than shotgun rounds, which are less powerful than rifle rounds, and if you fire them multiple times against the same material, like Batman's armor, the same caliber will have the same effect, and greater or lesser calibers will have greater or lesser effect. But Matt Reeves and his stunt coordinator don't know or care how they work. They work how he wants them to work when he wants them to so he can tell his story how he likes. Because fuck you. So now that the plot needs Batman to be really hurt and in serious danger, bullets hurt him, and you will ask no further questions about it. Got it? Good. Batman hangs for his dear life while this guy reloads, and then Catwoman teleports out of nowhere to save his ass. She kicks the thug aside, forgets about him, and pulls Batman up. Then that thug she didn't kill grabs her instead of shooting her, and decides again, rather than shooting her, I'm gonna fucking gut this bitch with a knife! Which gives Batman ample time to mainline some adrenaline because he's in so much pain from those bullets. Batman rees and starts bashing the Riddler thug's face in like there's no tomorrow until Gordon finally shows up and pulls him off. Gordon unmasks the thug, and it's the guy that Bruce ran into at the funeral who lamented the city's inability to help or care about his sick daughter. Gordon asks who he is, and through what's left of his face, he says, I'm Vengeance. Oh no. You see, guys? Batman said, I'm Vengeance, and then this guy said, I'm Vengeance, and Riddler said Batman inspired him, so it's Batman's fault these crazy murderers tried to murder everyone. You see? Themes! Just kidding. We'll get to the themes later, but right now, just focusing on the practical, this is fucking horseshit. The idea that Riddler and his gang were inspired by Batman is fucking asinine. Batman goes after criminals who harm innocent civilians, and he doesn't kill them. Riddler murders people who he perceives as having wronged him personally, and also anyone else he fucking feels like killing, like the people who nearly died when Gil Colson crashed his car into City Hall. Or all the millions of innocents who died in this flood for no fucking reason. And if you really wanted to draw the parallel and say Batman directly inspired these guys, you'd have them dress like Batman, not like Riddler, like this much better Batman movie did. Anyway, a big wave of flood that hadn't already gotten into this concave, much lower ground arena suddenly busts the door down and causes more destruction, probably killing hundreds more people as it collapses the stage Bella was hiding on. But she's probably fine. But now, holy electricity, Batman! Some loose wires are dangling above the water and sparking, and it might hurt the fucking dead people down below, so Batman fucking dives after it instead of using a batarang, and electrocutes himself to death because he's so fucking depressed because he just learned that stopping criminals is bad, and other bad people will learn the wrong lessons from it. But then, he falls into the water and is baptized and reborn as a disaster relief worker, and he gets better. Then, he lights a flare and leads the former mayor's son and the current mayor, who should be fucking dead, out of the wreckage of the stage as a beacon of hope. Fucking kill me. Nirvana kicks back in and Batman narrates some more to tell us how completely fucked the city is and how he did absolutely nothing to stop it. He says that criminals will seize the opportunity to loot and take control over major areas of the city that aid workers and the National Guard can't get to. And we get a shot of Penguin looking out over the city from Carmine's Wait! What the fuck? Penguin? Why are you not in fucking jail, dude? I swear to God, is he banging the mayor? We just don't know it yet. The man is untouchable. Bella Real gives a speech that says they will rebuild not just the city, but rebuild people's faith in institutions. Okay, never mind the real-world buzzwordification of that phrase that was happening in American politics at the time this film was released. But in the context of this story, people have every fucking right not to have any faith in their institutions. They were corrupt from top to bottom, and now the city is in the midst of a major disaster from a terrorist attack motivated by said corruption. They have no reason to trust you, Bella, which is why Riddler wanted you dead. Huh. Crazy as he is, I guess in this context, Riddler was still right. That fucking sucks. Batman realizes he's had more effect as a symbol of hope than one of vengeance, which is total horse shit because he definitely had criminals scared as vengeance, and leading a couple people out of a building is not nearly as effective as beating criminals to a pulp to keep them off the streets. Fuck you, movie! He says he has to become more, whatever the fuck that means. This is pretty much TLJ all over again.
I saved you. Tell me. That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.
Fucking meaningless drivel. We then show Riddler crying in his cell like he lost somehow. Apart from being in jail, which is his fault and didn't need to happen, and other than not killing Bella Real specifically, or Bruce, he achieved all his goals. He destroyed the system that he resented so much and killed the people specifically responsible for the corruption in the first place. Riddler won, and the film is trying very hard to pretend like that's not the case because Batman led a few people to safety. Fuck off. We get a really shitty Joker cameo, and then we mercifully move on to the last scene in the film. Batman meets up with Catwoman to not arrest her for her crimes and pretend like we give a shit about their unconvincing romance. She tries to get him to leave, it doesn't work, then they play tantric motorcycle tag before going their separate ways, and we finally fucking end the film! Oh my Jesus, hell, thank God! Fuck me, that was horrible! It's over! It's finally fucking over! Oh, okay. I'm okay. Sorry, I tried to hold it together as best I could, but as you can see, this movie and its issues have been eating at me for a while. And it's only been made worse, frankly, by the absolute lack of any in-depth analysis on this film on YouTube or anywhere else I've looked. I found a couple Reddit threads where people expressed issues or concerns, but of course they get flooded with people who reply with, "You're just wrong," or "You just didn't like it," or "You just didn't understand the film." The best I found video-wise is some angry rants that express their displeasure but make very few valid points, and a whole lot of vapid, unsubstantive positive reviews and essays that just say, "The film is good, better than The Dark Knight, and the best Batman movie ever," but never justify why or how that is the case. Honorable mentions to the Little Platoon, who gave a brief analysis, and EFAP's coverage of the film, which was rather mixed from all the panelists. From what I could tell, none of them were passionate enough to do an in-depth video on it, and that's part of why I decided to make my own. So, let's summarize the major issues plot-wise. I'll try not to retread detail since this section is already the longest in the video. We have at least 5 major plot holes that stop the film dead in its tracks, and so many tiny nitpicks, contrivances, and conveniences that I can't even count them all. Our main protagonist is a bumbling buffoon who has basically zero impact on the plot. If Batman isn't in the film, the result is the same. He stops none of the deaths that Riddler causes and doesn't catch the guy before he turns himself in. Riddler's plans and motivations are contradicted by everything we learn about him in the third act, and he is the main driving force of the plot. Nothing in the film can happen if Riddler isn't an insane retard. The film is broken to its core, and it's all because the writers couldn't be bothered to redraft and tighten a few things up. At least that's how it feels, but I happen to know that there is a third uncredited writer whose entire job was to revise the final draft of the script. From what I can find, it says that the film went through multiple drafts, but the exact number is not known. It kind of feels like a Last Jedi situation, but I have no definitive proof. Okay, now that we've gotten to the meat and potatoes of the plot and all its failings, we can move on to the next part of the review. The characters, how they are characterized, and how their actions in the plot affect the way we view them. Without further ado, let's move on to the characters. Luckily, going through the plot issues has done a lot of the heavy lifting as far as the main characters of the film and their choices throughout. That alone tells us a lot about how these people have been characterized and will inform how we see them as people based on what they do and why they do it. I think the best way to proceed is to go down the main cast list to explore the characters we got in this film, how they differ from their comic book counterparts, and just how consistent they are in their characterization. I'll save Riddler for last because I believe he is the most important part of the puzzle and the way he's written ties directly into the themes of the film. But, just for the sake of balance, I'll begin with the main man himself. It should be no secret to you at this point that I despise the way they portrayed Bruce in this film. Robert Pattinson gave a fine performance for what he was given. But what he was given is the problem. This version of Batman shares none of the positive traits of his comic book counterpart. This is primarily an adaptation argument, but it's my opinion that in this case the reason it has such a negative effect on the film is because they are adapting a well-known and beloved character. If this weren't Batman, I'd have very few strong arguments for why this main character is poorly written, other than that I don't personally find him admirable or interesting as a protagonist. But because we have near a century's worth of material to compare to, it's very easy to criticize the traits Bruce has been given in this film. Bruce Wayne in DC Comics is one of the most intelligent characters in the DC universe. He's a brilliant detective, strategist, chemist, engineer, linguist, master of disguise and deception, well-versed in criminology and psychology, cryptography, and use of advanced technology to help him solve crimes and increase his effectiveness in the field. He often uses his civilian guise of famous billionaire businessman and philanthropist Bruce Wayne to get access to information and people Batman can't associate with directly. He uses his company, money, and influence to improve Gotham as much as he can as a citizen, not just as a vigilante. He's an excellent strategist who always takes the most efficient, safe, and effective measure in all decisions he makes and tasks he needs to complete. On top of all of that, Bruce Wayne is an incredibly empathetic and passionate person despite his personal tragedies and emotional traumas. He's not always great at expressing his emotions, but they do drive a lot of what he does. He has a great concern for human life, even the lives of criminals, because it was the loss of his parents' lives that motivated him to be a hero in the first place. He can be sympathetic to the plight of criminals who steal out of desperation, but he never excuses their misdeeds just because he feels for their situation. He has a strong sense of morality and is dedicated to serving justice even when it affects the people he may have a soft spot for, like Catwoman or Mr. Freeze. He's a good person with strong morals who sticks to his convictions. That is who Bruce Wayne is. The Bruce Wayne we are given in this film has very few admirable qualities that we are used to seeing from Batman. His only skills as a vigilante seem to be the physical ones, fighting and driving. He solves very few of Riddler's clues on his own. He doesn't speak enough Spanish to catch Riddler's clue, and he doesn't just Google Translate it, which he could easily do. He doesn't overcome any obstacles in the film through cleverness or leveraging his knowledge or skills against his opponents. He pretty much only uses brute force the whole movie. He follows Riddler's instructions throughout the film to the letter and never anticipates or subverts his plans to get ahead of the murders or save lives. Batman loses badly in this film, primarily because he's not very smart. He makes numerous stupid decisions that lead to the death of innocents, and he doesn't seem to care much at all about that fact. He's reckless to the point of causing multiple civilian casualties, and he never pays for it. 2 years into his career, and Bruce hasn't learned any of the valuable lessons that Batman should know by this point. He doesn't make any effort to maintain a public persona as Bruce Wayne. He doesn't give money to charity or social programs that could improve the city in legal ways, and he doesn't have any involvement in or oversight of his company that he depends on for money to fund his operations. He's made no effort in 2 years to investigate or root out corruption within City Hall, the police department, or the DA's office, which is something Batman typically contends with in year 1. And the fact that he never knew or cared how corrupt the city was opened the door for a maniac like Riddler to do it in his stead. Apart from all of that, this Bruce Wayne is incredibly emotionally stunted and unstable for a man who seems so cool under pressure in dangerous situations. He flies off the handle very easily, even with people who love and care for him like Alfred. He constantly gives into his emotions instead of using his head. On top of it, he pays only lip service to the ideas of justice or law and order. Through his actions, Batman allows murderers and thieves like Riddler, Penguin, and Catwoman to get away with their crimes and never holds them to account. In Riddler's case, it's because he was too dumb to stop him in time, but even then, he seems to have no sympathy for Riddler's victims because they were criminals themselves. In Catwoman's case, he has opportunities to arrest her and bring her to justice, but chooses not to because he has a romantic attraction to her. In Penguin's case, he just doesn't seem to care if the man ever pays for his many crimes. This Batman is incompetent, immoral, and in no way does anything heroic throughout the film. He relies on his armor to save his life instead of his stealth, his skills, and his mind. He lets Penguin and Catwoman go free. He kills innocent civilians through his reckless actions, and he fails to stop a terrorist from killing millions of people. This is not a young and inexperienced Batman, and I will not humor that as an excuse for his incompetence. They decided this was Year 2 Batman, and they made him more naive and more incompetent than he is in Batman Year 1. This is a case where they had superior source material to draw from, and they chose to do something much dumber because it was original. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Matt Reeves not only did not fix it, but he decided to break it more. This Batman is not Batman, and he is not a hero. I don't have much criticism with the portrayal or characterization of Catwoman in this movie. I think Zoe Kravitz does a decent job at playing the femme fatale criminal love interest. Most of her decisions are consistent with her motivations and personality. My big gripe with Selina is that she doesn't need to be in this film at all. Her subplot involving her relationship with Falcone and Annika is largely unnecessary. It just serves as a way for her to get involved with Batman, but doesn't connect to the main Riddler plot in any significant way. I think she's here because they wanted a female lead/love interest to complement Batman, because without her, there aren't a lot of prominent female characters in this movie. In fact, besides Annika and Bella Real, who don't get much development at all, Selina is our female protagonist. They could have used her better, or not included her at all. But apart from that, and the white privilege comment, I like her in this movie. Similar to Catwoman, I don't have too much to say here. Gordon doesn't have a whole lot to do in this film, and what he does do is usually very stupid for a professional criminal investigator with decades of experience. The performance from Jeffrey Wright is fine, but it's a huge waste of one of the most talented actors working today, especially since they decided to race swap one of the most well-known comic book characters of all time to get him here. My general position is that I am against race-swapping any character in a film adaptation of a well-known story, historical or fictional. If you decide to do it anyway and you cast an excellent actor like Wright, I'll usually still give it a chance because a great actor can elevate any role from average to excellent. I felt the same way with Lawrence Fishburne when he was cast as Perry White in Man of Steel. But like that film, I didn't think the performance here was good enough to merit such a massive change. I think Zoe Kravitz did a good enough job with Selina that I didn't notice it, but I was very disappointed in this take on Gordon just from the writing alone, and the race change didn't help me give it the benefit of the doubt. Oh, also, I don't know if I need to say this because I don't know how anyone watching this views racial politics, but changing any character's race to some other race is racist, no matter which direction you do it in. Clear? Okay, moving on. Great performance from John Turturro, excellent casting choice, no big problems with this one. The woman strangling thing becomes an issue for me in the Penguin show, but that is neither here nor there. We'll get there eventually. Gil is a pointless and stupid character that I don't buy for 1 second in this film. Not a criticism of the actor, just the writing. I have a hard time believing anybody who rises to the office of district attorney in the most crime-ridden and corrupt city in America could be so spineless, pathetic, unreliable, and easily manipulated as Gil Colson. You get an F! And I don't even give grades to the others. Another great actor playing a great character and giving a satisfactory performance. I have no problems with Alfred's character, just the nature of his relationship with Bruce, and that we don't get more of him in the film. By far the best performance in the film and the definitive standout character, Colin Farrell is excellent in the role, and the heavy makeup work they did for Oz pays off. You can't even see the actor, just the character. All the decisions he makes are consistent with how he is characterized, even when everyone around him is acting like a complete moron. Adaptation-wise, he comes off as more of a generic gangster than Penguin, almost like a Tony Soprano impression. But he retains Penguin's ruthless and self-serving nature. He's always looking for a way to benefit himself, and he'll pull any dirty trick he can to save his own skin. I understand completely why he got a spin-off, and maybe I'll get a chance to talk about that show in the future. As it stands now, he is the best written character in the film. Oh, Riddler. Where to begin? He's arguably the most important character in the film, even more so than Batman, just due to the sheer amount of impact he has on the world and the story. He is the driving force of the plot. He makes everything happen in this movie, so it's important they nail his character, motivations, and the actions he takes to achieve his goals. They did not nail it, in case you were wondering. Nothing Riddler does makes any sense, and as a result, the film itself makes no sense. My two primary criticisms are poor adaptation and inconsistent characterization. We'll start with the latter so we can criticize what we were given before we compare to what we could have gotten instead. We learn a lot more about Riddler as the film progresses, but since we've already gone through the plot, we can use the full context now to assess Riddler's life, experiences, motivations, and actions throughout the film to see how they line up. Edward Nashton was orphaned at a young age, one of the many children who were wards of the Gotham Orphanage founded and operated by Thomas Wayne. Thomas promised to improve the orphanage and the lives of the children who lived there with the Gotham Renewal Fund once he won his race for mayor. Thomas was killed instead, and the new mayor abused the Renewal Fund, ensuring none of that money went to the orphans who needed it. This led to Edward growing up bitter and disillusioned with Gotham's political elite, and holding personal resentment towards Bruce Wayne, Thomas's now orphaned son who, despite his personal loss, still had a fortune, a mansion, and a butler to keep him well taken care of. There are more details of Edward's life in this continuity that are given to us by some third-party prequel novels and comics, but that stuff is not in the film and I haven't read them, so I'm going to stick with what details the movie gives us. As an adult, Edward obtained a job as a forensic accountant for a prominent firm that was contracted to manage the city's taxes and finances. It was there that he discovered some undisclosed evidence or hint towards the corrupt money laundering being done by city officials through the very same renewal fund that was supposed to give him a better life. This is what motivates Edward, as well as his love of puzzles and riddles, to become the Riddler, a vengeful serial killer who targets all the people involved in the misuse of the renewal fund and the wider spread corruption of Gotham's infrastructure. From this backstory, we're told a few things about Edward's priorities and goals. He resents the rich political elite of Gotham stealing from the poor and disregarding the lower-class citizens entirely by flooding their streets with drugs and violence. He wants a better world for the poor orphans of Gotham like himself and believes that killing these men and exposing their corrupt misdeeds is the best path to doing that. Apart from his motivations, we can deduce from his work as an accountant, his ability to hack computer systems, devise complex mechanical devices like his bombs, and leave circuitous clues and puzzles for Batman and the police that he is a highly intelligent, logically efficient, but not entirely mentally stable individual. Knowing these things about him, Riddler stays fairly consistent throughout the first two acts of the film. It's his motivations, intentions, and misconceptions that we learn about in the third act that throw all these ideas out the window and create massive contradictions and inconsistencies that are hard to accept. One of our first big revelations is that Riddler has not been taunting Batman with his riddles, challenging him to stop him, but that he was giving Batman information on purpose to help him expose and kill all of Riddler's victims. He thought he and Batman were partners with similar goals who were teaming up to take down the corrupt political elite of Gotham. Okay. How? How did Riddler come to this conclusion? We see from the documents in Riddler's apartment that he has been following and studying Batman's activities for some time. He's very familiar with Batman's work. He would know that Batman only targets criminals, that he doesn't use deadly force, and that he often works in tandem with the corrupt GCPD. I can't see any logical reason Riddler would have to believe they could be allies. So why does he believe this? Well, I guess because he's delusional, aka, he's crazy. We're going to find that the answer to a lot of the things that stop making sense about Riddler can only be justified by the cop-out of, he's crazy. This is a bad answer to a question about inconsistent character actions and motivations. There's no perceived error in character writing that cannot be written off by saying a character is insane. This is because your average audience member is not a psychologist and doesn't necessarily know how mental illness works. There are many different types of mental illnesses, but a common truth of most is that while the actions of a mentally ill person may not make sense to you, it still makes sense to them. Their internal logic works in ways so different from the average healthy person that we have a hard time understanding how their mind works. But rest assured, they believe their delusions to be true. They still act based on their own internal logic, no matter how misguided it is. They may believe a fact or circumstance that is not true due to their delusion, but because they believe it, they act based on that belief, even if it seems nonsensical to you. Logically, there isn't a reason I can name for Riddler to think that his and Batman's methods and goals align unless he's just completely delusional. So, he's just crazy. That is an incredibly dissatisfying answer after building Riddler up to be this smart, subversive, scheming villain. Moving on. We further reveal that despite his earlier crimes being focused on removing corruption to benefit the people and fix a broken system, that the final step in Riddler's plan is to kill millions of innocent people by blowing up Gotham's seawall and flooding the city so that the system can be destroyed entirely, because now he doesn't believe there's any way to fix it. He believes that despite having zero negative press or skeletons in her closet and seeming like an all-around noble person, Bella Real will be just as corrupt and ineffective as the last mayor, and that it doesn't matter who's in office. The only real change we can hope for is destroying the city. Where in the hell did this come from? I thought Riddler wanted to fix the city for all the poor orphans and other lower-class citizens like himself. Now he's going to kill them all? Does he not realize that the flooding will affect mostly the poor people like himself in the lower-income areas, and the evil rich elite he hates will be safe up in their ivory towers? Did he not think about that? Or was he lying and he doesn't actually care about orphans or poor people and he's just a genocidal maniac? Is he crazy? Or is he stupid? I guess he's both, even though he was previously established as a high-functioning, intelligent mastermind. This method does not line up with his goals either way you slice it. If Riddler does care about orphans and puppies, he should not flood the city. If he doesn't care about innocent lives, he still shouldn't flood the city because there was no reason to spend all that time targeting specific individuals and murder them one by one, and flood the city causing mass death and destruction. Had he flooded the city first and not bothered with the singular murders, the people he wants dead would have been the most protected from the flood damage, so it wouldn't have made sense to do it then. But since he did it after, he's now killing only the most impoverished innocent people in the city who have nowhere else to go. If he really wants Bella Real dead, the gunman on the roof would be enough to get the job done. They almost kill her successfully even with all the chaos from the flood. Without it, they would have had a clean shot when she makes her speech. And if he wants her dead not because she's corrupt, but because he doesn't trust anyone in powerful institutions, then he doesn't really care about corruption. He just wants anarchy, chaos, and death. Because he's crazy. Which segues nicely into my other main criticism. This character we are given in the film is not the Riddler. He has zero in common with the character from the comics other than his name and the fact that he leaves cryptic clues behind for Batman to solve, which is an aspect of many Batman villains that isn't even unique to the Riddler. His backstory, motivations, tactics, personality, and general philosophy and goals are reminiscent to another Batman villain who would have made much more sense to use in this film. In fact, if you change the name and the color scheme, the character Paul Dano plays in the movie doesn't need to be changed much at all, but he would be a perfect fit. I think another back-to-back comparison will be best to contrast how Riddler is typically portrayed in comics and what the film gave us. Comic book Riddler is a highly intelligent and technically proficient criminal capable of leaving complex codes and clues and building intricate machines and traps for Batman to solve. He is egocentric and obsessive-compulsive, which is why he feels the need to leave clues that confound his opponents and prove his superior intellect over them. He is solely motivated by greed and the need to prove he is more intelligent than the world's greatest detective, Batman. He is not typically portrayed to be any more than average when it comes to strength or athleticism, as his strength comes from his mind, not his body. Riddler has very little regard for the well-being of others and will regularly threaten innocents or take hostages. He often employs common thugs who are less intelligent than him to help him complete his traps and plans, and rarely does any physical work himself if he doesn't need to. He respects Batman's intellect, but he would never admit it. He despises Batman and seeks only to defeat, humiliate, and destroy him publicly so he can prove once and for all that he is the smartest man alive. Movie Riddler is also highly intelligent and technically proficient. He also seems to be somewhere on the autism spectrum, but seems highly functional despite his condition. As a result of this, he also showed his high intelligence at a very young age. He is motivated by childhood idealism and philosophical dedication to equality and justice. These beliefs cause him to seek to root out a corrupt system, even if that means bringing it down entirely in a wake of cleansing destruction. He believes this will free the lower class or the downtrodden from the oppression of the corrupt political elite. This Riddler claims to be not much of a physical force, yet we see him execute several kidnappings and murders and achieving feats of athleticism and strength such as climbing a building or moving a fully grown man all by himself. He seems to have empathy for the lower class, but does not realize that his destructive actions ultimately harm them more than it helps. He recruits the disenfranchised and downtrodden members of society to his cause by appealing to their suffering at the hands of a system that has cast them out entirely. His plan to flood the city and destroy its corrupt infrastructure is effective, but in practice is contradictory to his philosophy of freeing the common man from upper-class oppression, as it will likely harm them more than it will help. He respects Batman entirely and even idolizes him to the point of thinking their goals are aligned because he completely misinterprets Batman's intent when combating crime in Gotham. In case that comparison didn't make it clear, the character from the comics and the character from the film share very little in common. However, the film version of Riddler does share quite a few traits with another character from Batman's Rogues Gallery, Lonnie Machin, aka Anarchy. Anarchy is a childhood prodigy who is well versed in radical philosophy and political science, as well as many practical skills such as engineering, guerrilla tactics, and explosives. His primary motivator is anti-statism, which is essentially Riddler's conclusion in this film, and he seeks to disrupt, destroy, and overthrow all forms of political infrastructure which he views as corrupt and oppressive. Anarchy is an entirely political animal, believing that anarchism is the only political philosophy that leads to equality, freedom, and justice for all. He is not motivated by greed, personal tragedy, or revenge, only his political and philosophical idealism. This character is almost one-to-one with the person Paul Dano portrays in the film, apart from the tragic orphan backstory. In fact, if you change the color scheme of his costume and his name, you don't have to alter the way Riddler is written much at all to have a coherent character. But as the Riddler, he is nonsensical and contradictory in his beliefs, motivations, actions, and personality. So, let's summarize the issues with Riddler. The Flood was a bad plan no matter what Riddler's actual motivations are. Batman is known to be a crime fighter who works with the police, so there's no way Riddler wouldn't know this and no way he would assume Batman is his ally and therefore would not leave him clues to help him progress his investigation. Riddler claims he's not physical, but he commits several murders and kidnappings by himself with no problem. Even if he weren't physically capable himself, he has an army of followers who could be executing his schemes for him. Because the Flood was unnecessary, he didn't need to turn himself in to be safe at Arkham, and he wouldn't have gone to Arkham that night anyway. And the biggest flaw of all is that Matt Reeves wrote a character whose actions would make perfect sense if he were someone else, but not for the person he decided to write for. This character makes no sense as Riddler, but he makes perfect sense as Anarchy. But since that's not what Matt Reeves wrote, Riddler's entire character is a huge flaw with the film, and since the film relies so heavily on Riddler's actions, most of the film makes zero sense at all. Riddler breaks the film entirely and should never have been written into it in the first place. So, in conclusion, we have a handful of supporting characters who are either inoffensive or bad in ways that don't really hurt the film, two main characters who are nothing like their source material and so mind-bendingly stupid or crazy that nothing they do in the main plot makes any sense, and only one standout character who is well-written and entertaining to watch, and he appears for a total of 9 minutes in the film. Not so great on the character writing. Add to that the completely broken plot, working out a major failure for this film when it comes to anything beyond the surface-level aesthetics. I wish I could say it gets better when we get to the thematic subtext that motivates these choices, but I'm afraid that what Matt Reeves was trying to say with this dog bone of a script is the worst part about it. Let's move on to... Oh boy, themes. We're finally here. Themes are a complicated thing to discuss because you can't really criticize what ideas a filmmaker chooses to explore in his movie in any sense beyond the subjective. On top of that, themes are often used as an argument to why a film is good, regardless of execution of said themes. You can certainly critique the execution of a theme objectively, and I will attempt to do that as well, but largely the problem I have with the thematic elements of this film is how much they clash with the very idea of a superhero broadly, and with the character of Batman specifically. I will try to be as charitable as I can regarding Matt Reeves' motivations and intentions while writing this script and what he wanted to say about Batman, vigilantism, heroism, classism, political violence, criminality, and how trauma and mental illness affect a person and how they act out against the world. I'll be upfront though. From going through all the interviews and behind-the-scenes footage I could find, I quite like Matt Reeves. He seems like a nice guy, and I don't think he had ill intent with how he presented Batman, so I'm not here to prove his personal views or politics beyond a shadow of a doubt. I'm just trying to analyze what I see on screen, what it could mean, and what I took from it as an audience member. Many reviewers, including myself, picked up on the themes of class separation and social inequality. A lot of this centers around the dichotomy between Batman and his villains, Riddler, Catwoman, and to a much lesser degree in this film, Penguin. Riddler and Catwoman both come from poverty and troubled childhoods. Selina's mother was a waitress at a club until she died when Selina was 7. From there, she had to struggle to survive on her own, presumably by stealing and scamming to scratch by. Edward grew up in an orphanage and was only able to pull himself out of poverty because of his aptitude for learning and numbers, which gave him opportunities to make money as an accountant. Both characters use their unfortunate upbringings as an excuse to commit crimes and harm others. Selina, because she didn't have enough as a child, makes a living by stealing it from others. Edward resents those who have a lot and got to the top of society by taking it from those who have less and is willing to kill them as retribution for their greed and selfishness. From their dialogue in the film, both seem to view anybody wealthy as having obtained that wealth by stealing it from the poor, rather than having earned it through hard work. Sadly, the film proves them correct, because the only rich people we see in this film are the corrupt city officials who stole city money from the poor, and Bruce Wayne, who inherited it from his parents. Bruce Wayne was an orphan as well, but not in the way that Edward and Selina were. He lost his parents, but he dealt with that grief in a lavish mansion tended by a fatherly butler funded by the billions his family had made in the medical industry helping others. But they don't see it that way. That money doesn't belong to Bruce. He didn't earn it, so he shouldn't have it. They also believe that this upbringing has left him out of touch to the struggles of people like them. And in the case of this film, they're right. Bruce is a privileged billionaire who spends his money only on his own excesses, a car, armor, and expensive computer equipment that allow him to go out at night and take his trauma and his loss out on the other poor, underprivileged criminals who are probably just stealing to feed their families. Sure they are. He doesn't use his money to help the poor or improve the city, he only uses it to fund his vigilantism, which the film only portrays as a negative. This is a problem with Bruce's characterization in the film. It makes him the exact type of person poor, jaded criminals and radicals demonize in their mind as being every person with more money than them. Furthermore, the villains being right about Bruce's privilege fuels their perspective that because Bruce had money, his personal tragedies and traumas don't matter because he didn't have to struggle in any financial way. They feel he doesn't deserve to be so upset about his parents being murdered in front of him when he was 8 because he had a butler. All the class criticisms of Batman in this film are only valid because they change Bruce's character so heavily from the comics, where he is a shining example of the rare, altruistic billionaire philanthropist who does use his wealth and resources to help anyone he can. I imagine this will be more divisive if you're not someone who is already hyper-aware of DEI and social activism as a written policy in Hollywood, but if you're not aware, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies are ubiquitous at most major Hollywood studios these days. It is literally written into their contracts that they need to have a certain number of minorities in the cast and production crew, and that the script needs to have some storylines or references to some current social cause or trend, and while this film doesn't hit you over the head with it as much as others do, the themes are still very present, especially in the casting. Basically, all the virtuous characters who you are meant to sympathize and agree with or who have some admirable quality belong to a protected class of some kind, and all the despicable or flawed characters who the film criticizes or portrays negatively are straight, white, male, and usually rich. And on top of that, they had to race swap 2 major characters to even achieve this ratio. Catwoman is half black, bisexual, and a woman. Jim Gordon is an incorruptible black police officer. Bella Real is a completely virtuous and powerful black female politician who is going to fix all of the city's problems. None of these characters have flaws or get held to account to any sort of negative trait or action they have in the film. Even the white male characters who have any sort of redeeming qualities are some sort of victim. Alfred is a servant, and Riddler is a poor orphan with mental illness who gets his views and morals proven correct in the end. The only direct reference to critical race theory or other racial agendas is Catwoman's white privileged assholes comment, which stuck out like a sore thumb and had most audiences scratching their heads. Speaking of Catwoman, let's address the film's inclusion of her and why. Catwoman is largely irrelevant to the plot of this film. Her subplot barely intersects with the main Riddler mystery except to explore her forced romance with Batman. It seems clear to me that she was only shoehorned into this film because without her, we have no female lead. Literally, the only other two female characters of note are Annika and Bella Real, who are severely underdeveloped and are seemingly just living plot devices. You could call this feminism in action, but more likely it's just sloppy inclusion of an unnecessary female character so you don't get accused of being misogynistic or sexist for not including more female representation in your male-dominated superhero movie. Intersectionality comes in with her multiple protected statuses that all unite to form a super victim who is above all criticism despite her many flaws. She is made bisexual in this film for no reason, just to tick another box. She also hates and resents men for being attracted to her, much like most feminists, yet she has a crush on Batman, somebody she has accused of being rich and white, a thing she criticized other men for, but then gave him a pass because she wants to sleep with him. Like most feminists. Furthermore, her crimes are justified by Batman himself because she is a poor woman of color whose criminal father abandoned her, so that somehow makes it okay for her to steal illegal drug money. She is never held to task for this, or for the fact that she tries to murder two men in this film, one of whom is a police officer. Bottom line, if you're black, gay, poor, or a woman, you're exempt from any criticism. But if you're white, straight, male, and rich, you are literally evil and you need to apologize for how you were born. As we've already established, the flooding at the end of the film is stupid. All I could find in reference to why Matt Reeves wanted this in the movie is that he was thinking about Hurricane Katrina and all the devastation it caused. Okay, I guess that's fair, you do you, but what does that have to do with this story? In my opinion, it only exists to show that the waters have risen well above sea level as a virtue signal about climate change. The third act action sequence can still function perfectly well without it, and Riddler has no logical or ideological motivation to slaughter millions in such a cruel way, so I don't see any other potential motivation for including it when it is the very first instance in almost 100 years of Gotham City being portrayed as below sea level. Even further, there was a way to have the flood without inserting a seawall/raised water levels. Most major cities have water basins or reservoirs protected by a dam to supply the city with clean water. He could have blown up the reservoir. Boom, there's your flood. There's a literal interpretation that can be taken here with the GCPD's massive internal corruption, but it extends as a metaphor for police brutality through Batman's personal crusade against crime. Batman and the police are incompetent and corrupt. They are also oblivious to the systemic corruption working hand in hand with the men responsible for the city's woes. It's also contradictory, as despite the corrupt officials of Gotham stealing money from the people, the film advocates for Bruce giving all of his money away to a system that has already misappropriated and abused such a donation. Batman has been active for 2 years, and neither he nor Gordon ever cottoned onto or tried to clean up the corruption within the city government. They are shown to have very little actual effect on the city's violent crime rate. They are viewed only as authoritarian bullies who pick on the lower class of the city who only get in the way of the real arbiter of justice, the villain. Riddler is the only person in the film who actually makes progress towards cleaning up Gotham's crime and corruption. They make him a mass murderer in the final act out of nowhere so we don't view him as a hero, but everything else he's done in the film so far was effective. Stopping crime apparently does not make the city a safer place for its citizens, but politically motivated violence does. This is the central issue with the film's message, and it poisons every other element of the script. Batman is criticized in this film because he only targets street-level criminals. This is portrayed as cruel and ineffective because it is the popular opinion in Hollywood that crime itself is only ever a result of poverty and desperation, never greed or malice. Desperation caused by a corrupt capitalist system that keeps them poor and desperate. Therefore, beating up thieves, rapists, or murderers makes you the bad guy because the poor, underprivileged criminals never had a choice in their actions. Fighting crime is inherently immoral to these people. You should instead be trying to take down the horribly corrupt system that put these people on the bottom of society in the first place. Never mind all the violence that comes from their actions, it's society's fault that they're like this, and you should be starting a revolution to dismantle the oppressive regime. This is why it is okay for Catwoman to steal from white, privileged assholes, and for Riddler to murder corrupt politicians without trial or evidence of their crimes. This is proven to be a viable solution to Gotham's woes, much more so than Batman or the police combating crime. Politically motivated violence works, vigilantism does not. The summation of all these themes and how they coalesce in the narrative paint a picture of a very flawed and skewed moral view of the world and reality itself. It seems like Matt Reeves is just another out-of-touch Hollywood director who advocates for radical far-left politics because it's the trendy thing to do, despite the fact that these views are antithetical to the character of Batman and the idea of superheroes as a whole. The superhero genre relies on having faith in humanity and having an optimistic view of what one person is capable of. That one virtuous, selfless person can make a difference in society and inspire others to do the same. This idea is essential to any heroic tale, but even more so to the American superhero. In fact, I would argue this and superheroes as a whole are a uniquely American ideal that every individual can and should aspire to improve society by their actions, that every one of us has something only we can offer society if we are of good moral character and have the fortitude to follow through no matter how hard life gets. This film does not share this heroic view of humanity or the character of Batman. This film spends the entire runtime creating a straw man of Batman who doesn't represent the character from the source material at all in order to criticize the attributes the writer thinks that Batman has. This is because the writers think that the character of Batman is inherently immoral because he is a billionaire and a violent vigilante who uses his wealth and resources to enforce his will upon the lower-class criminals whom they view as being victims of society. They have a problem with the very idea of a man who uses his great wealth and privilege to combat crime and corruption because in their mind, no such man can possibly exist. So it purposely portrays him as an angry, arrogant, ignorant, selfish, emotionally stunted, ineffectual, and dangerous recluse who needs to completely change his mission, methods, and philosophy. He needs to become a non-violent philanthropist who gives all of his money away and stops punching criminals. Basically, this film thinks he should just stop being Batman because being Batman is immoral. And furthermore, all of these criticisms of Batman are only valid because they removed all of the character's positive traits, leaving only a violent, self-absorbed man-child who beats up criminals but affects no real positive change. This film hates Batman. You know what? I'm just gonna say it. Jewish Hitler was right! Well, that was an adventure. I appreciate everyone who watched the whole way through, and whether you agree with my assessment or not, I hope you got something out of the experience, even if it was just a laugh or two. This is the first full-length edited video I've ever made, as I'm sure you can tell, but I felt passionate enough about this movie to try and learn a new skill and make the type of video I would like to see. That being said, I'm still learning, so please, whatever feedback you have, do share it, positive or negative. If this does well enough, I'm considering doing a similar breakdown of The Penguin Show, and possibly a rewrite of The Batman where I try to use the criticisms I've detailed here to fix the script of the movie and see if we couldn't gotten a better story out of it. I've also recently watched James Gunn's Creature Commandos, and I have quite a bit to say about that as well. Thank you all again so much for watching. If you liked it, leave a like. If you hated it, tell me in the comments, and if you know anybody who might enjoy it, please share it around. I'll catch you guys later.